Chapter 2889. Even though the 100 poisons crocodile dragon pearl contained potent poison, the number was as many as 100 types, the power incomparably terrifying. Only high-ranking divine lords had the qualifications and ability to directly refine it. But to the heaven-mending pearl, these were all just pure power. Going through the heaven-mending pearl's devouring and purification, the 100 types of potent poisons all became docile, merging into Zhou Xian's body unceasingly. As for the divine power contained in the crocodile dragon pearl, it was devoured by the heaven-mending pearl. Very soon 5 days' time passed. The 100 poisons crocodile dragon pearl disappeared. The 100 types of potent poisons were all refined by Zhou Xian. He grasped the 100 poisons and could display and use them smoothly and freely. Fusing them in some divine abilities and mystic arts, it would even have a powerful effect that was unexpected. But he was not satisfied with this. He continued cultivating again, dividing those 100 types of potent poisons into 5 major categories. The first category of potent poisons had berserk power and could instantly take lives. The second category of potent poisons possessed super corrosive power. Regardless of whether it was rocks, steel, or divine weapons and armors, it could all corrode them into ashes. The third category of potent poisons specialized in corroding flesh and blood life. The fourth category of potent poisons targeted the divine soul specifically. As for the fifth category of potent poisons, the attributes were more chaotic. Some were subtle, requiring a very long time before they could manifest power. Some possessed terrifying infectivity, often able to last for several tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, exterminating all life. Zhou Xian fused the power of these 5 great categories of potent poisons, condensing into one law after another. 3 days later, the berserk potent poison law condensed successfully. 6 days later, the corrosive potent poison law condensed and took form. 9 days later, the blood-transforming potent poison law was mastered. 12 days later, the soul-extinguishing potent poison law was mastered successfully. 15 days later, the last mystic poison law was mastered. At this point, Zhou Xian grasped 85 kinds of divine Dao laws. Although his strength realm was still first-level divine lord realm, his true combat strength already reached an extremely terrifying level. He revolved his skill and recuperated for another 2 days before ending close seclusion cultivation and leaving the divine tower. Zhoosh! A light flashed. Zhou Xian returned to the secret chamber. He put away the 9 heavens 10 absolute pagoda, opened the secret chamber's door and walked out. I was in close seclusion for 50 days in the divine tower, only 1 day has passed in the outside world. Qi Huangji should have finished cleaning up the household already, right? With this thought in mind, Zhou Xian walked towards the great council hall. When he entered the meeting hall, he saw a group of Qi family guards escorting 3 stewards out. The 3 stewards were all in ragged clothes and covered in blood. They looked dispirited and weak. Evidently, the 3 of them had all been tortured miserably. In the great council hall, Qi Huangji sat at the head of the table with the white dragon standing beside him. More than 20 stewards and 2 deacons were standing in the middle of the hall, looking cautious and fearful. The air was still filled with the thick smell of blood. In the middle of the hall, there was a corpse lying on the ground. Fresh blood was flowing out of the corpse. It was obvious that the corpse had just been executed. Seeing Zhou Xian appear, Qi Huangji nodded slightly and greeted him. Brother Tianxing, the situation has been investigated. Qi Huangji planned to report the investigation to Zhou Xian face to face. Zhou Xian glanced at the people in the hall and waved his hand. You may leave first. You have all seen what happened today with your own eyes. Take this as a warning. In the future, if anyone dares to make the same mistake, they will suffer the same fate. The 2 deacons and 20 stewards nodded in unison. Then they bowed and left the hall as if relieved of a heavy burden. All along, everyone had thought that Qi Huangji had a good temper. Although he was a bit of a profligate, he was considered gentle and not scheming. But this time they had witnessed Qi Huangji's shrewdness and methods. In the great council hall, they had witnessed Qi Huangji killing people with a sword and dealing with spies. Everyone's impression of him had been overturned. Only then did they realize that he had a ruthless and decisive side. The hour just now had been very torturous for everyone. Everyone was anxious and uneasy, and their hearts were in turmoil. Fortunately, Zhou Xian arrived in time and waved his hand to dismiss them. Only then did they feel relieved. Naturally, they left as quickly as possible. After everyone had left, only Ji Tianxing and Bai Long were left in the hall. Qi Huangji then said, "Brother Tianxing, with Bai Long's help I found out the truth. Qin Feng and Ming Yang were both spies groomed by the city lord's mansion. They were planted in the Qi mansion 30 years ago. They were the city lord's mansion spies and stole a lot of the Qi family's secrets. You've already killed Qin Feng and I've punished Ming Yang in public as punishment. After today's incident, many of the core members are intimidated and have lingering fears. I believe that for a long time they won't dare to act rashly." Then Qi Huangji smiled and cupped his hands in salute. "This time, it's all thanks to you that I have the chance to establish my prestige." Ji Tianxing nodded nonchalantly and asked, "When I came in just now, I saw the 3 stewards being escorted out. What happened to them?" Qi Huangji hurriedly explained, "Those 3 stewards weren't spies from other factions. It's just that they took bribes and were roped in by Qin Feng and Ming Yang. That's why they wallowed in the mire. Although they didn't know Qin Feng's identity, they didn't betray or plot to destroy the Qi family. But they were blinded by greed and almost committed a grave mistake. I demoted them, punished them with 300 lashes, and sent them to the mine to work for 10 years as punishment." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and chuckled. "Speaking of which, they haven't committed a grave mistake, but you punished them so harshly. Aren't you afraid that they'll harbor resentment and revolt or betray the Qi family?" Qi Huangji said confidently, "I want to use this opportunity to establish my prestige. Of course, I have to punish them severely. They can only blame themselves for not having eyes and bumping into me. They deserve to be punished. Besides, now that the city lord's mansion has been destroyed, the Qi family is the strongest faction in Qingshan City. No matter how much resentment those 3 fellows have, they won't dare to betray the Qi family. After leaving the Qi family, they're nothing. Who else can they rely on?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "All right, I'll leave these internal affairs to you. Soon I might have to leave Qingshan City. From now on, the Qi family's foundation will depend on you to protect it." Hearing this news, Qi Huangji's body trembled and revealed a reluctant expression. "It can't be. We've worked so hard for so long and finally achieved a great victory. We're about to usher in our most glorious moment. Aren't you going to stay for a while longer? Why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Ji Tianxing said calmly, "The city lord's mansion exists in name only, and the Lu family has become an empty shell. Now the Qi family is the strongest in Qingshan City, and no other faction can contend against them. If I'm not wrong, Qingshan City will soon fall into the Qi family's control. It looks like the situation is going well. But don't forget, we still have 2 more powerful enemies: Princess Tianfeng and Master Bloodsword." Chapter 2890. Hearing Ji Tianxing's words, Qi Huangji fell silent. He frowned and asked, "I understand, but why do you want to leave Green Mountain City? I know you're not afraid of trouble." Neither would he be afraid of Princess Tianfeng and the Bloodsword sect, abandoning the Qi clan and fleeing alone. "If we work together, won't we have a better chance of winning?" Ji Tianxing patted him on the shoulder and shook his head with a smile. "You can't be blindly optimistic. You have to accept reality. Even if I work with the Qi family, we may not be able to defeat Princess Tianfeng and the Bloodsword sect. Instead, we'll drag the Qi family into a quagmire." Qi Huangji immediately understood his intentions. His heart was filled with shock and gratitude, and his nose felt a little sour. "Brother Tianxing, you don't want to implicate the Qi family, so you cut ties with us? But if you leave Green Mountain City, you'll have to face the revenge of Princess Tianfeng and the Bloodsword sect alone. Isn't that very dangerous? How is our Qi family worthy of your protection?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said with an indifferent smile, "All right, don't be so emotional. I'm not as great as you think. If you feel guilty, why don't you take out more treasures to make it up to me?" Qi Huangji was stunned for a moment and smiled bitterly. "Of course I can make it up to you. Divine beast mounts, divine stones, pills, weapons and equipment, you can choose whatever you want." Ji Tianxing shook his head. "Forget it, I don't need any of these things. If you really want to repay me, I'll go to Mine 9 to cultivate for 10 days. Then we'll call it even." "That's all?" Qi Huangji was shocked and his eyes widened in disbelief. "No, absolutely not." He waved his hand and said firmly, "If you want to cultivate in Mine 9, you can do it for as many days as you want. Also, I'll prepare a big gift for you. When you leave Green Mountain City, I'll give it to you. Ji Tianxing didn't refuse and nodded. All right, that's it then. Also, I have 50,000 pearls and 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment. Help me deal with them. What? 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment? Qi Huangji's eyes widened. He was so shocked that he almost bit his tongue. Brother Tianxing, are you kidding me? How can we deal with 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment? Even a set of low-level heavenly god equipment can be sold for 40,000 divine stones. If it's a high-quality heavenly divine artifact, a set would cost at least 160,000 divine stones. That would be 8 billion. Even though the Qi family was the wealthiest, it was nothing compared to the city's mansion, the city. And the Qiziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziziz gods, was to say the to make to. Tian. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment, then nodded and said, that's true. With the Qi family's financial resources, it'll be difficult to deal with this batch of goods. It'll take at least decades. In the whole of Qingshan City, there was no one who could take on this batch of goods. Huangji, how many? 2. A bitter smile appeared on Qi Huangji's face. He deliberated for a moment before extending 2 fingers. 20,000 sets? Bai Long asked. Qi Huangji shook his head. 2,000 and it'll take half a month. Ji Tianxing waved his hand. Forget it. That's too slow. I'll figure it out myself. Qi Huangji's eyes glowed as he thought of an idea. Right, if you're in a hurry you can go to Ning Xiyuan in the Tianxia County. The Nings are one of the wealthiest families in the Tianxia County. They're not only in the pet and pellet business, but also in the equipment business. I think they'll be able to help you in no time. Ji Tianxing nodded. Okay, I see. Let's talk about it later. If there's nothing else, I'm going to cultivate in the 9th mine. Don't let anyone disturb me. Also, Huangji, keep collecting information about the City Lord Mansion, the Lu family and the Blood Sword sect. When will your father return to the Tianxia County? When will the Qi family be granted the title by the emperor? Qi Huangji cupped his hands and said, okay, I'll send someone to collect information. You can cultivate in peace. Then Bai Long followed Ji Tianxing out of the hall and into the Cave of Dark Light. Qi Huangji summoned 2 bodyguards and ordered them to gather information. On the way to the Cave of Dark Light, Bai Long was puzzled. He asked Ji Tianxing through telepathy, Master, there are only about 2,000 guards and private soldiers in the City Lord's mansion. That old bastard Yuan Qingkong refined 50,000 sets of equipment. What's he up to? Ji Tianxing said calmly, divine weapons and equipment can be used to equip soldiers, and can also be used as currency for transactions. The Tianxia County is small, but Yuan Qingkong's backer is Princess Tianfeng. I think he's working for Princess Tianfeng. Bai Long nodded and said, that's right. There are at least 40 to 50,000 soldiers under Princess Tianfeng's command. Ji Tianxing continued, I've checked Yuan Qingkong's and Yan Zong's space rings. There are tens of billions of god stones, all kinds of elixirs, materials for charms and rare treasures. In addition to the 6 monarch-level divine weapons, there are many secret books and 40,000 sets of divine realm equipment. Roughly, the value of these resources is more than 30 billion. Bai Long was shocked. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, damn. Together with the 50,000 pearls and divine realm equipment, it's worth 40 billion. How can a mere city lord of the Tianxia County be so rich? Back then when I followed you to the realm of the gods, I only had a few 100 billion. Ji Tianxing said with a smile. When we traveled around we didn't deliberately accumulate wealth. Naturally we weren't rich. Moreover, we only lived in the realm of the gods for 500 years. Yuan Qingkong's forces have been accumulating for almost 1,000 years. Moreover, the City Lord Mansion has taken control of the Cave of Dark Light and is crazily seizing resources. Bai Long nodded in agreement and reminded him, no matter what, Master, you have to be careful of Princess Tianfeng. I always feel that the City Lord of the Qingshan County is very important to Princess Tianfeng. You killed the City Lord of the Qingshan County, and Princess Tianfeng will not let it go. Ji Tianxing's expression was calm as he dismissed it with a smile. I'll deal with it when the time comes. No matter how strong they are, they're just an army. What's there to be afraid of? While chatting, the master and disciple entered mine number 9. 10 guards of the Qi family were supervising and hundreds of miners were working hard. When they saw Ji Tianxing, they bowed to him. Bai Long ordered everyone to stop working and leave mine number 9. Then Bai Long stood guard at the entrance of the mine to protect Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing went deep into the mine and sat cross-legged on the divine essence vein. He began to cultivate. Chapter 2891. Ji Tianxing had a premonition. The fall of the city lord's mansion definitely wouldn't intimidate Princess Tianfeng and the Blood Sword sect. After a short period of peace, they would definitely take revenge even more fiercely. Therefore he would soon have to leave Azure Mountain City. This was the last time he would devour the divine crystal mine before he left. Whoosh. As he used the Devour Divine ability, the black vortex enveloped the divine crystal mine and endless 7-colored divine power surged into his body. Strands of 7-colored divine power gathered from all directions and weaved into a net in the air. He was like a bottomless pit that wouldn't be filled no matter what. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days passed by. The vast divine power was purified by the heaven-mending orb and merged into his body. His divine Tao foundation became more and more stable and his aura became more and more powerful. After reaching the Divine Lord realm, every level was 10 times more difficult than the Heavenly God realm. In the divine world, most divine lords would need hundreds or even thousands of years of bitter cultivation to reach the next level. But Ji Tianxing was different. The heaven-mending orb and the Devour Divine ability were terrifying and heaven-defying. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianxing's strength had reached the peak of the first level of the Divine Lord realm. His strength had also accumulated to an extremely high level, and his aura was unfathomable. He was just a little bit away from reaching the second level of the Divine Lord realm. However, there was a bottleneck that he couldn't smoothly break through. He still lacked an opportunity. There wasn't much point in continuing to devour the divine crystal mine. He was temporarily stuck at the peak of the first level and couldn't advance any further. Moreover, the power of the divine crystal mine had decreased by 60%. Not only was the aura of the mine much weaker, but even the divine crystals in the ores had dimmed. Therefore Ji Tianxing could only end his cultivation. After opening his eyes, he casually picked up a few ores and crushed them to observe the divine crystals within. Seeing the weak light of the 7-colored divine crystals, he couldn't help but smile awkwardly. I devoured too much this time. Not only did the mine lose a lot of power, but the quality of the divine crystals also decreased by half. I wonder how Qi Huangji and his son will react when they find out about this. Before this, Qi Huangji had vowed that Ji Tianxing could cultivate in mine number 9 for as long as he wanted. Now that he thought about it, Qi Huangji was still too young. Ji Tianxing got up and walked out of the mine. When he was about to reach the entrance of the mine, he saw from afar that the white dragon was squatting in the pit, digging with a face full of concentration. White dragon dug out one or after another and took out 7-colored divine crystals. He held a few pieces of 7-colored divine crystals in his hands, sizing them up as he shook his head and sighed. Isn't Master too fierce? How many days had it been since he started cultivating? It had almost sucked dry the power of the mineral vein. Look at these divine crystals, all of them look so listless as if they have kidney deficiency. Sigh. Although he had a look of disdain on his face, he still put the divine crystals into his spatial ring. Ji Tianxing was both annoyed and amused. He asked, "White dragon, what are you doing?" The white dragon was awakened. He hurriedly threw away the ore in his hand, pretending that nothing had happened and flew over with a smile. "Master, you're done with your closed-door cultivation? Let's go then." Ji Tianxing raised an eyebrow and said earnestly, "White dragon, I already have 40 billion worth of resources. This is the first bucket of gold we've dug up since we returned to the divine realm. We don't have to worry about cultivation resources for the next few decades. Moreover, we have the 5 elements world and so many source stones. We don't lack cultivation resources at all. Why do you have to dig out the divine crystals yourself? How many divine crystals can you dig out even if you dig day and night for 10 days like this?" The white dragon humbly nodded and said, "You're right, master. Your disciple is stupid. In the past 10 days your disciple's hands are almost worn out, but I've only dug out tens of thousands of divine crystals. Master, you're powerful enough to plunder 40 billion worth of resources with just a little trick. Your disciple can't compare to you. I'm full of admiration." "Alright, stop flattering me." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and led him out. "We should go." Not long after, the master and disciple left the cave of profound light. Qi Huangji had been waiting for a long time. He hurriedly led them into a palace and talked in the study. Brother Tianqing, you're finally out. I've heard a lot of news these days. There are 2 pieces of good news. Do you want to hear them? Qi Huangji was beaming with joy. He was obviously in a good mood. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly. Go ahead. Qi Huangji said with a smile. The first piece of good news is that my father came back 2 days ago. Yesterday morning, the imperial envoy and eunuchs arrived at the Qi residence and announced the decree in public. My father was conferred the title of Viscount of Xianxia. The news has spread and the whole Xianxia city is talking about it. Our Qi family is famous everywhere and has become a real noble family. Ji Tianqing expected this news, so he wasn't surprised. He nodded and said, What else? Qi Huangji continued. The second piece of good news is that Yuan Qingkong and Yan Zong died on Black Shark Island. The news has spread to the surrounding cities. On the night of the incident, the family members of the city lord's residence quietly fled Qingshan City under the escort of 600 guards. The city lord's residence is now empty, with only a few hundred guards and servants left. The same goes for the Liu family. Many of the servants and guards have been dismissed. The Liu family's widow and family members have packed up their belongings and left Qingshan City for their distant relatives in Tianfeng County. After hearing this news, Bai Long didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He asked, You call this good news? We haven't searched the city lord's residence and the Liu family's treasury. Those people must have taken all the money and treasures with them when they left Qingshan City. That's true. Qi Huangji was startled. He smiled embarrassedly and said, However, Brother Tianqing has 10 billion yuan in wealth and hasn't mentioned it. I'm sure he doesn't care. For us, with the city lord's residence and the Liu family gone, we have 2 fewer opponents. The remaining Feng, Qi and Yuqi families have been watching from the sidelines. They know very well why the city lord's residence and the Liu family were defeated. Now the 3 aristocratic families are afraid of us and can't wait to join forces to prevent us from wiping them out. Our Qi family has finally gained a foothold in Qingshan City. Ji Tianqing tapped his fingers on the armrest of his chair. He pondered for a moment and said, A country can't go a day without a ruler, and a city can't go a day without a ruler. The city lord's residence is only in name now. Someone must step up and take over the position of the city lord to maintain the stability of Qingshan City. Huangji, the imperial envoy, hasn't left Qingshan City yet, right? Qi Huangji vaguely guessed something. His eyes lit up and he quickly nodded. He's a guest at my house. He'll leave early tomorrow morning to report back to the imperial city. Ji Tianqing smiled. That's great. Send a message to your father now and ask him to volunteer to take over the position of the city lord. After all, this is for the sake of Qingshan City's stability. End of chapter. Chapter 2892. You want my father to ask the monarch to make him the lord of Qingshan City? Qi Huangji was stunned. He looked at Ji Tianqing in astonishment. Brother Tianqing, is this right? According to the laws of the God Kingdom, the appointment and dismissal of the lord of Qingshan City must be examined and approved by the commandery princess before being reported to the monarch. Then the monarch can decide on the appointment and dismissal and issue an edict. My father directly asked the monarch for the appointment through the imperial envoy. This is completely against the rules. This is overstepping. Ji Tianqing looked at him with a half-smile and asked, Do you want your father to be the lord of Qingshan City? Qi Huangji answered without hesitation, Of course. Once my father becomes the lord of Qingshan City, the Qi family's 1,000-year foundation will be as stable as a mountain. Not only will the Qi family's status rise, but its power will also grow rapidly. Even the Ning family of Tianxia City will think highly of us. As the young lord of Qingshan City, the difference in status between me and Ning Xiyuan will not be that big. At this point, Qi Huangji suddenly realized that he had inadvertently said what was on his mind, so he quickly shut up. Ji Tianqing asked again, You want your father to be the lord of Qingshan City. Not only will his status be stable, but there will also be many benefits. But do you think the commandery princess of Tianfeng will recommend your father to be the lord of Qingshan City? Qi Huangji quickly shook his head and sneered, Not to mention recommending my father to be the lord of Qingshan City. Even if my father begs him, he will refuse. He might even be thinking about how to get rid of our Qi family. Ji Tianqing nodded and smiled. Since you know this, Why don't you ask your father to fight for it? Even if your father does this and oversteps the rules, so what? Your father has just been conferred the title of Duke. The monarch will not punish him on account of his contributions. Moreover, wealth comes from danger. Ji Tianxing said nothing more. If Qi Huangji and Qi Tianlong did not have the courage, there was nothing he could do. If they missed this opportunity, they could only blame the Qi family for not working hard enough and not having a meteoric rise. Qi Huangji hesitated for a moment, then nodded firmly. All right, I'll send a message to my father now. He did not avoid Ji Tianxing and White Dragon, and took out a communication jade slip on the spot, and sent a message to Qi Tianlong. For the past 2 days, the Qi residence had been decorated with lanterns and colored banners, creating a joyous atmosphere. The family head had been conferred the title of Viscount by the monarch, and the entire Qi family was incomparably glorious. In addition, the imperial envoy had arrived and was a guest at the Qi residence. Everyone in the clan was very proud, as if they were superior to everyone else and had become the noblest clan in Green Mountain City. The guards and servants became even more cautious and respectful, not daring to make the slightest mistake. It was evening and the sun was about to set. Qi Tianlong was handling affairs in the study. The housekeeper walked briskly to the door, bowed and reporting to the family head, "The banquet has been prepared and can start soon. Do you want to invite the imperial envoy now?" Early the next morning, the imperial envoy and the eunuchs would leave Xianxia City and return to the capital to report on their mission. Tonight's banquet was a farewell for the imperial envoy, and it was very grand. Qi Tianlong put down the affairs in his hands and nodded slightly. All right, go and ask the imperial envoy now. I'll be there soon. The housekeeper acknowledged the order and turned to leave. Qi Tianlong prepared to change into a luxurious robe before attending the banquet. But at this moment, a spiritual light flew from the sky and landed in front of him. The spiritual light dissipated and a communication jade slip appeared. Qi Tianlong was stunned for a moment. He reached out to hold the jade slip and read the contents with his divine sense. A moment later, after reading the contents of the jade slip, his expression changed on the spot. His eyes widened slightly, revealing a look of shock and disbelief. This little brat, when did he become so bold? Qi Tianlong could not believe that the shocking words in the jade slip came from his son, Qi Huangji. In his mind, Qi Huangji had always been a foppish and idle person. Even though Qi Huangji had obviously grown a lot in the past month under Tianxing's service. But Qi Tianlong found it hard to believe that Qi Huangji had such courage to make such a shocking suggestion. After a short moment of shock, Qi Tianlong crushed the jade slip in his hand and fell into silence and hesitation. He could roughly guess that Qi Huangji's suggestion was most likely the idea of Sir Tianxing. But this question was no longer important. What he was most conflicted about now was whether to listen to Qi Huangji's suggestion or not. Should he take advantage of tonight's banquet to express his intentions to the imperial envoy face to face and make a request to the king? If I make this request face to face, I'll most likely be scolded by the imperial envoy. If the news reaches the king, he might even be angered and think that I, a newly promoted viscount, am unreasonably arrogant and don't know the rules. There's a 90% chance that the king will reject my request and leave a bad impression in his heart. But Xianxia City is already a mess, and it's located in the northernmost part of the continent, right next to the Sunset Seas. It's very important. Maybe there's a 10% chance that the king will agree to my request? Qi Tianlong frowned and silently weighed the pros and cons. If there was enough time, he really wanted to calm down and seriously consider for 2 days before making a decision. But the steward had already gone to invite the imperial envoy, and the banquet was about to begin. The time left for him was at most 100 breaths. He had to make a decision. After a long time, Qi Tianlong took a deep breath, secretly gritted his teeth and made a decision. He didn't waste any more time to change his clothes. After tidying up his appearance, he left the study and rushed to the reception hall where the banquet was held. Night fell. In the splendid reception hall, gemstone lamps were lit, and the brilliance was gorgeous and gentle. In the middle of the hall, there was a long dining table filled with delicacies and fine wine. The one sitting in the host's seat was naturally the imperial envoy. This was a middle-aged man wearing a python-patterned golden robe. His body was tall and sturdy and his face was resolute. His bearing was noble and dignified, and his strength had reached the 6th level of the Divine Lord realm. This person was called Divine Lord Shuemo, and he was the right commander-in-chief of the Royal City Palace Guard. He had great authority. Qi Tianlong got the news from the Ning family that this person was the trusted aide of the third prince. Beside Divine Lord Shuemo, there was a white-haired old man with a fair face and jade-like skin. The old man's body was thin and he looked weak. However, his clothes were very beautiful and exquisite, and there was not a speck of dust on them. He wore a jade crown and held a square handkerchief in his hand. From time to time he covered his mouth and coughed, looking sickly. Even so, no one dared to despise him. Because this old eunuch was a favorite of the monarch and he was a 7th-degree upper divine lord. Even Divine Lord Shuemo had to be respectful to him. In order to entertain Divine Lord Shuemo and the old eunuch, the Qi family took great pains. There were only 5 people at the big dining table. Besides the imperial envoy and the eunuch, there were only the family master Qi Tianlong and 2 elders. The 3 of them smiled apologetically and toasted to the imperial envoy and the old eunuch, flattering them secretly. After 3 rounds of wine, Divine Lord Shuemo put down the wine cup. The smile on his face disappeared and he asked casually, "I heard that the governor of Yuan City was killed?" Qi Tianlong's face froze, and his hand that was holding the wine cup trembled. Chapter 2893. Qi Tianlong had not found a chance to make a request to Sir God Shuemo unexpectedly. Sir God Shuemo spoke first. His tone was calm and indifferent without the slightest emotion, making it impossible for others to guess his true thoughts. Qi Tianlong could not figure out Sir God Shuemo's intention. Was he going to make things difficult for the Qi family? After all, Sir God Shuemo said that the city master was killed, not that the city master was dead. There was only one word difference, but the meaning was different. Qi Tianlong put down his cup and calmed down. He nodded and said, "What the imperial envoy said is true. The city master of Yuan City was indeed killed. It happened a few days ago." Sir God Shuemo said again, "I also heard that the Qi family and the city master's mansion have a grudge?" Hearing this, the 2 elders of the Qi family changed their faces. They immediately put down their wine cups, not in the mood to eat or drink, and listened in silence. Qi Tianlong was under more pressure. He was worried, but he did not show it on his face. He replied calmly, "Sir, you are well informed. There is indeed such a thing. Speaking of the origin of the grudge, we have to start from 70 years ago. Here." Qi Tianlong told Sir God Shuemo the origin of the fight in the Dark Light Cave. Sir God Shuemo nodded and said, "So the grudge between the Qi family and the city master's mansion is only limited to the fight in the Dark Light Cave. The city master's mansion has controlled the treasury for 70 years. They thought that it was in the bag. But they lost the martial arts competition and the Dark Light Cave was taken away by the Qi family. Viscount Tianlong, is that true?" Qi Tianlong nodded and said yes. The old eunuch coughed and wiped his mouth with a square handkerchief. He asked in a sharp voice, "Although the treasury can produce a huge amount of wealth every year, it is very tempting. But no matter what, you should not have killed Yuan Qingkong and his son. After all, they were nobles bestowed by the monarch and the city lords under the rule of the divine kingdom. Viscount Tianlong, you can't bear this crime, right?" Qi Tianlong quickly stood up and bowed. He said solemnly, "Your Excellency's words make Tianlong extremely fearful. I will never agree with you. As everyone knows, Yuan Qingkong and his son died in the Setting Sun Sea area in the territory of the Black Mermaid clan. This matter has nothing to do with the Qi family. Tianlong will not break the law. Moreover, when Yuan Qingkong and his son died, Sky Dragon was waiting for orders in the capital and had not yet returned to Green Mountain City. Sirs, please judge clearly." The old eunuch nodded slightly and asked again, "You weren't there when it happened, so of course the monarch knows. However, I've heard that your Qi family has recruited a new consecrator. His strength and methods are very powerful." The old eunuch obviously meant something else. With a smile on his face, Qi Tianlong replied respectfully, "My lord, you must be joking. Tianxing is young and courageous, brave and resourceful. However, these were all small skirmishes that couldn't even enter the discerning eyes of the 2 lords. After all, he's just a young man who has yet to break through to the Divine Lord realm." He did not defend Ji Tianxing and deny that he killed Yuan Qingkong. Instead he explained to the imperial envoy and the old eunuch that Xianxia had not yet reached the Divine Lord realm. As long as one wasn't an idiot, one would understand that it was impossible for a young heavenly god realm cultivator to kill Yuan Qingkong. The old eunuch took a deep look at Qi Tianlong and said nothing. Sir God Shuimo smiled and said, "Viscount Tianlong, don't be nervous. We're just asking casually. You're a new viscount and a meritorious official. Why would we suspect the Qi family?" Qi Tianlong also smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "Thank you, my lords, for your insight." Sir God Shuimo nodded and said earnestly, "Remember what you've said tonight. Also, don't let down the monarch's trust and title." Qi Tianlong hurriedly agreed and took the opportunity to praise the king's wisdom and martial prowess, flattering him. Sir God Shuimo was gratified and the old eunuch also showed a rare smile. The banquet was about to end in such a harmonious atmosphere. However, Qi Tianlong plucked up his courage and said to the two lords, "My lords, there's something that has been bothering Tianlong. After much consideration, Tianlong has decided to ask for your help." Sir God Shuimo looked at him with interest and asked, "What's the matter?" Qi Tianlong bowed deeply and said in a sincere tone, "May Tianlong be so bold as to ask the two of you to help Qingshan City find a new ruler? Now the city lord and his son are dead and the people in the city lord's mansion have fled in the night. The spacious city lord's mansion is empty and the people in the city guard department are in a panic. Countless guards are slacking off. The security in the city is deteriorating and it is gradually becoming chaotic. In addition, the Black Mermaids tribe in the Sunset Sea area is eyeing Qingshan City covetously and they are full of ambition. In recent days, the residents in the city are in a panic and many of them have the idea of escaping. Even the cases of missing persons, theft and murder are breaking out frequently." Qi Tianlong's tone was sorrowful and there was a bit of worry in it. As the saying goes, a city can't be without a lord. Qingshan City has no lord and there are rumors everywhere. The people are restless and uneasy. Aristocratic families like the Qi family have the ability to protect themselves and try their best to maintain the order in the city and protect the residents. However, our power is limited after all. I hope the two lords can report the situation to the monarch and appoint a new lord as soon as possible. Otherwise, the 3 million people in Qingshan City will be in danger. After saying that, Qi Tianlong bowed to Sir God Shuimo and the old eunuch. Sir God Shuimo and the old eunuch looked at each other and there was a strange look in their eyes. One was smiling faintly while the other was praising him. The old eunuch nodded slightly and said, "Viscount Tianlong cares about the country and the people. You care about the people and it is the blessing of Qingshan City." Sir God Shuimo pondered for a while and asked, "Viscount Tianlong, you are an aristocrat who has been in the city for hundreds of years. You know the situation better. What suggestions do you have for the current situation?" The meaning of this sentence was somewhat interesting. Qi Tianlong felt warm in his heart and he was grateful to the imperial envoy. He quickly replied, "The situation in Qingshan City is deteriorating rapidly and it has reached a very dangerous stage. In addition, the Black Mermaids tribe has been very active recently and there is a tendency for them to go south. Tianlong thinks that this matter must be decided as soon as possible to calm the people down." Of course, Tianlong also knows that the appointment of a lord is of great importance and it cannot be done rashly. However, the situation is urgent and we can be flexible. Why don't we appoint a person with both ability and integrity to take charge of the situation? Calm the people down and stabilize the situation in Qingshan City so that the monarch has enough time to consider. Hearing this, the old eunuch took a deep look at him again. Sir God Shuimo looked at the cave and pondered for a while. He nodded and said, "This method is feasible. After all, the people are the foundation of the country. The monarch doesn't want Qingshan City to fall into chaos. Viscount Tianlong, who do you think is a person with both ability and integrity who can take charge of the situation?" Qi Tianlong pretended to think seriously and asked, "Master Yuqi, Master Feng and Master Qi are all prestigious aristocratic families. I can choose one of the three." The old eunuch's eyes became more and more playful. Sir God Shuimo smiled and asked, "Among the 3 masters you recommend, who has a title?" "Heir." Qi Tianlong was stunned and shook his head. "No. How can you be the temporary lord of the city if you don't have a title? This is not in accordance with the laws of the kingdom of God." Sir God Shuimo denied. Qi Tianlong frowned and muttered, "Then it's not easy to deal with this. Sir God Shuemo looked at him with a smile and asked, Viscount Tianlong, are you not going to recommend yourself? Qi Tianlong was stunned for a moment before he asked, My lord, is this even possible? Is it in accordance with the laws? Sir God Shuemo smiled and said, The laws of the kingdom of God don't stipulate that you can't recommend yourself. Therefore, if you are willing to take the responsibility of calming the people down, you can recommend yourself. Chapter 2894. Viscount Tianlong, are you willing to maintain the stability of Green Mountain City and pacify millions of people? Sir God Shuemo looked at Qi Tianlong with a smile and asked, Plus, you have to face the pressure of Black Mermaid's tribe's possible invasion. In a short period of time, the Holy Nation won't send troops to help. You can only rely on your family to maintain the situation. Are you willing to bear the heavy responsibility and repay the monarch's appreciation? Qi Tianlong's blood flowed quickly and he nodded solemnly, It's my honor to serve the monarch and 3 million people. Sir God Shuemo nodded slightly and smiled, That's great. I'll report this matter to the monarch in detail. The imperial envoy was swift and decisive and he didn't waste any time. Then he took out a special jade slip and wrote a secret memorial to the monarch. After a while he finished writing the secret memorial and sent it out solemnly. Qi Tianlong looked at the jade slip disappearing into the night sky and he was nervous. Success or failure would depend on the monarch's reaction. Sir God Shuemo was still relaxed and he smiled, All right, let's continue drinking after we've finished our business. Qi Tianlong quickly agreed and took turns toasting Sir God Shuemo and the old eunuch with the 2 elders of Qi family. The toasting and flattery before was out of respect and flattery. Now the toasting was more out of gratitude. Qi Tianlong knew clearly that Sir God Shuemo had helped him a lot. That was why things went so smoothly. Fortunately, I was wrong after hearing it. I listened to Reverend Tianxing's suggestion. If I didn't gamble this time, I wouldn't know I'd be so lucky. Now it's up to the monarch's decision. Everyone drank and chatted. The atmosphere was much warmer. About 15 minutes later, there was a spiritual light that flew back and landed in front of Sir God Shuemo. The spiritual light dispersed and a special golden jade slip appeared. It was the secret memorial from the monarch. Sir God Shuemo picked up the secret memorial and looked at Qi Tianlong with a smile. He asked mischievously, Viscount Tianlong, the answer will be revealed soon. Are you nervous? Qi Tianlong smiled awkwardly and cupped his hands. Tianlong is stupid. I don't dare to guess the monarch's intention. Sir God Shuemo stopped teasing him and read the contents of the secret memorial with divine sense. After reading it, he was stunned for a moment and his expression was somewhat playful. Qi Tianlong's heart tightened and he could not help but ask, My lord, what does the monarch think? Sir God Shuemo looked at him with deep eyes and said solemnly, The monarch's reply is only 4 words. Do as you deem fit. Qi Tianlong was stunned for a moment and then sighed, The monarch is indeed wise. His holy will is unpredictable. Imperial Envoy Darren is also a pillar of the country, to think that he is so trusted and valued by the monarch. The monarch's intention was obvious. He wanted Sir God Shuemo to make the decision himself. Sir God Shuemo could decide the position of the master of the city with a single thought. What kind of trust was that? The old eunuch reminded him in a timely manner, I don't dare to speculate on the monarch's thoughts. However, I would like to remind you, Imperial Envoy, that behind acting on your own initiative, there is a joint responsibility. To put it simply, since Sir God Shuemo made the decision, he had to be responsible. Qi Tianlong became the city lord. If he made contributions, he would also be rewarded for his ability to judge people. If Qi Tianlong messed things up and caused trouble, then he would be punished as well. Sir God Shuemo pondered for a moment and looked at Qi Tianlong with burning eyes. He said in a deep voice, Viscount Tianlong, you understand the monarch's intention and Eunuch Li's words, right? Qi Tianlong quickly bowed and said solemnly, You are willing to trust me. I will be deeply grateful and never forget you. Rest assured, I will do my best to maintain the stability of Green Mountain City. Not only that, I will do my best to make contributions and not let you down. Sir God Shuemo smiled satisfactorily and nodded. Very good, Viscount Tianlong is loyal to the monarch. I admire you very much for the people of Green Mountain City. Now, I will use the monarch's verbal order to announce that Viscount Qi Tianlong will temporarily take over the position of the city lord of Green Mountain City. The verbal order was not as formal as the conferment. It had to be announced to the world. However, this was the monarch's verbal order. It was still the final word. Qi Tianlong and the two elders of the Qi family were so excited that their blood was boiling. They quickly stood up and bowed, kowtowed and thanked the monarch. Sir God Shuimo and the old eunuch represented the monarch and received the three of them. This matter was settled. Everyone drank and chatted for a long time. After the guests and the host enjoyed themselves, they left the banquet. The next morning, the guards of Sir God Shuimo and the old eunuch left the Qi residence. Qi Tianlong led the guards of the Qi family to send the imperial envoy out of the city and watch them leave. Soon after, Qi Tianlong personally led the guards and entered the luxurious mansion. Originally, there were only servants and servants left in the mansion. They were selling their belongings and running away. After the Qi family took over the mansion, they dismissed most of the servants and servants, leaving only a small number of them. At the same time, the guards of the Qi family purposely spread the news that the monarch had given a verbal order to appoint Qi Tianlong as the acting city lord. After the news spread, it immediately caused an uproar in Green Mountain City. Millions of people were discussing this matter. Most of them knew that the Qi family had killed Yuan Qingkong and his son, as well as the two consecrators of the mansion. But in the end, Qi Tianlong was not only made a viscount, but also the new city lord. This was simply too terrifying. However, everyone only guessed that the Qi family had killed Yuan Qingkong and his son. There was no evidence. Ordinary people did not dare to say it in public. Otherwise, the consequences would be unpredictable. The Feng family, Qi family, and Yuqi family were qualified to compete with the Qi family. But the Qi family was favored by the emperor. They were first made a viscount and then took over the position of the city lord. They also did not know if the Qi family had anything to do with the royal family and the monarch. Under such circumstances, no matter how shocked they were or how unwilling they were, they could only swallow their anger. Whoever dared to stand up against the Qi family would be seeking their own death. The Qi family could use the monarch's verbal order to get rid of them legitimately. Therefore, while Green Mountain City was bustling with noise and discussion, the three aristocratic families were very quiet. The process of the Qi family taking over Green Mountain City was very smooth. There was almost no resistance. In just one day, the city lord's mansion, the city guard department, and the various departments were all controlled by the Qi family. Qi Tianlong was confident that within 10 days he could eradicate the remnants of the previous city lord and replace them with the Qi family. At that time, Green Mountain City would truly fall into the hands of the Qi family. At night, Qi Tianlong sat in the study of the city lord's mansion, looking at his surroundings with satisfaction. Men drag these desks, chairs and couches out and sweep them all. I don't want anything that Yuan Qingkong has used. Following his order, a few guards rushed into the study and began to move the items. Qi Tianlong thought for a while and ordered, "Send a message to the young master. Tell him to come back with consecrator Tianxing." Chapter 2895. Late at night, Qi Tianlong sat in the study room, concentrating on handling official business. He had just taken over the position of the city lord, and there were too many things to deal with. In the next month he would not have much time to rest. However, no matter how hard it was, he would gladly endure it. At this time, a guard outside the door reported. Reporting to the city lord, the young city lord and Tianxing have returned. As soon as the Qi family took over the city lord mansion, these guards and servants cleverly changed the way they addressed him. To Qi Tianlong, they did not even need to call him the acting city lord. Anyway, everyone knew that the position of the city lord would definitely belong to Qi Tianlong. Even Qi Huangji was basking in the limelight, becoming the honorable young city lord. Qi Tianlong hurriedly put down the document in his hand and said, "Bring them in." The guard obeyed and bowed out of the study room. Immediately, Qi Huangji and Ji Tianxing stepped into the study room. "Father, you really did it." As soon as he entered the study room, Qi Huangji could not wait to rush to his father and give him a bear hug. Qi Tianlong was full of joy, but he could not help but scold. "Huangji, let go. You are now the young city lord. Why are you still acting like a child? Where is your decency?" Pushing Qi Huangji away, he hurriedly greeted Ji Tianxing and bowed sincerely. "I thank young Master Tianxing for his great kindness. If it were not for young Master Tianxing's advice, personally experiencing danger and making outstanding contributions, what did I, Qi Tianlong, do to make the Qi family so glorious?" Being conferred the title of Viscount by the monarch and taking over the position of city lord was something he did not even dare to dream of before. And Ji Tianxing had only been in the Qi family for a month, and he had helped him realize his dream. Qi Tianlong's gratitude and respect for Ji Tianxing was really difficult to express in words. Ji Tianxing stretched out his hand and helped Qi Tianlong up. He smiled and said, "Patriarch, you are too serious. Although I have done my best, you also need to seize the opportunity to succeed. In short, this is everyone's credit." Qi Tianlong was even more moved. He praised from the bottom of his heart, "Young master's wisdom is unparalleled. You are so humble and courteous and never arrogant. This Qi is truly moved that this tiny Xianxia city was able to welcome such a prodigy of worldly affairs like you. I don't know how much good fortune it has received." Without waiting for Ji Tianxing to reply, Qi Huangji laughed and said, "Father, how can a small temple like Qingshan town accommodate a great bodhisattva like him?" Brother Tianxing said that he will be leaving Qingshan city in 2 days. Hearing this news, Qi Tianlong's body stiffened. Leaving in 2 days? So sudden? He knew very well that someone like Ji Tianxing would not stay in Qingshan city forever. But he didn't expect Ji Tianxing to be in such a hurry to leave. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Now that the situation in Qingshan city has been settled and the Qi family has gotten what they wanted, there's not much use for me to stay. I'll only attract more powerful enemies. The small Qingshan city could not bear the wrath of those big shots. After I leave, their target will naturally change and the Qi family will be safe." Qi Tianlong's heart tightened and complex emotions gushed out. His eyes were even a little red. "Young Master Tianxing, you've given so much thought to the Qi family and the Qi family is deeply indebted to you. How can the Qi family repay you? I will never be able to repay this kindness." Ji Tianxing smiled and shook his head. "Master, you're too serious. Huangji has already repaid you, so you don't have to worry about this matter. Before I leave, I only have one last request." Qi Tianlong nodded without hesitation. "Young master, please speak." Ji Tianxing, "Master, please send a message to Miss Ning Xiyuan to ask if there's a result of that matter." Qi Tianlong frowned doubtfully. "That matter?" Ji Tianxing chuckled and said, "You don't have to say much, just pass my words to her." "Okay, no problem." Qi Tianlong did not ask any more questions and agreed to this matter. The three of them sat down and chatted over tea. Qi Tianlong hesitated for a moment before asking the question in his heart. "Young Master Tianxing, it was your idea to ask Huangji to become the city lord, right? You're not in Qingshan city and you haven't seen the imperial envoy, so how can you be sure that the envoy will agree?" Qi Huangji was also very doubtful and looked at Ji Tianxing expectantly. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said with a smile, "I'm only 80% sure, so I can't be 100% sure. I'm guessing that although the monarch is far away in the capital, he has a pervasive intelligence network, and his eyes and ears are all over the blood-flame divine country. The monarch is well aware of the relationship between Yuan Qingkong and Princess Tianfeng. The monarch can also investigate the alliance between Yuan Qingkong, the Lu family and the Blood Sword sect. Since the Blood Sword sect is involved, we have to consider the backing behind the Blood Sword sect, which is a big shot in the royal family. This kind of big shot is most likely a governor or a prince with the ability to fight for the throne." Hearing this, Qi Tianlong and his son had a vague idea. Ji Tianxing continued, "I've seen the information. The monarch is old and has plans to pass down the throne. After retiring, he wants to break through to the God King realm. Apart from the first prince who died young, the monarch has 4 princes. These 4 have already made contributions and have considerable power, and they're fighting openly and covertly to inherit the throne. Therefore, I'm guessing that the big shot behind the Blood Sword sect should be a prince. The Blood Sword sect killed the innocent in Qingshan city and despicably stole the profound light cave. The monarch must know about this. However, the monarch pretended not to know because he didn't want to hurt that prince's face." Hearing this, Qi Tianlong suddenly understood and said, "Therefore the monarch might be a little dissatisfied with that prince and the Blood Sword sect, but it's inconvenient for him to act. This time the monarch sent an imperial envoy to bestow me the title. In order to avoid suspicion, he definitely wouldn't send that prince's people. Otherwise he would be supporting that prince and the Blood Sword sect, which would only make the Blood Sword sect even more domineering." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "That's right. That prince also guessed the monarch's intentions, so the Blood Sword sect has recently disappeared without a trace and hasn't acted." Qi Tianlong added, I heard from Ning Qinggang that the imperial envoy this time, God Monarch Blood Inc., is a trusted aide of the third prince. Ji Tianxing nodded and said with certainty, since that's the case, the backer behind the Blood Sword sect is definitely not the third prince. Moreover, the third prince and that prince are most likely competitors. Hearing this, Qi Tianlong suddenly understood and slapped his thigh. So that's how it is. No wonder God Monarch Blood Inc. didn't refuse when I tactfully suggested it at the banquet yesterday. Not only was he happy to see it happen, he even deliberately guided me and supported me. The monarch's orders allowed him to act as he pleased, but he also had to take responsibility. When I expressed my stance to him, he agreed without hesitation. Pausing for a moment, Qi Tianlong frowned and said, so, God Monarch Blood Inc. is deliberately trying to rope me in to strengthen the third prince's forces? Since I've already boarded the third prince's ship, I'm irreconcilable with the prince behind the Blood Sword sect? Ji Tianxing smiled and said, that's indeed the case. You should know what you're doing in the future. However, you don't have to worry. You're now the third prince's subordinate and also a viscount newly conferred by the monarch. As long as the people of the Blood Sword sect aren't crazy, they won't dare to act against you. As for me, I'm the target of their anger. Chapter 2896. After listening to Ji Tianxing's analysis, Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianxing were enlightened. They finally understood why the Qi clan had been doing so well for the past month. First, they were given the title of nobility, then they were appointed as the city lord and controlled the entire Green Mountain city. It turned out that all of this was within Ji Tianxing's expectations and calculations. Without a doubt, the Qi clan had the last laugh. And Ji Tianxing had sacrificed too much for this, and he was also in great danger. Qi Tianlong felt increasingly guilty, and his heart was filled with uneasiness and shame. Even though Ji Tianxing said that Qi Huangji had already repaid him. But Qi Tianlong still felt that it was not right to not prepare a generous gift to thank him. Young Master Tianxing, have you thought about where to go after leaving Green Mountain City? Qi Tianlong tried to ask Ji Tianxing about his whereabouts. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said calmly, although I will be wandering around the boundless heaven continent most of the time in the future. However, the first place they went to was Tianfeng in Tianshui County. Qi Tianlong hurriedly advised, the Princess of Tianfeng will definitely not let you go, so if you pass by Tianfeng County, try not to linger. Go straight to Tianshui County. I will send a message to Ning Qinggang and ask him to take care of you. This way it will be more convenient for you to move around Tianshui County. Ji Tianxing did not refuse and said with a smile, thank you. Then the three of them chatted for a while before going their separate ways. For the next 2 days, Qi Tianlong was busy taking over Qingshan City, and he was swamped with work every day. Qi Huangji was focused on gathering all kinds of resources and treasures. In order to prepare a gift for Ji Tianxing, he almost ran through the entire Green Mountain City. Ji Tianxing had been resting in the city lord's mansion and did not show up. When Yuan Qingkong's men left, they emptied the treasury of resources and many divine ability manuals in the library pavilion. However, there were still countless ancient books and records left in the library pavilion. Most of them were history books, biographies, astronomy, geography, travel notes, and all kinds of strange stories. To others, these things were of no value. They were not even as valuable as the Divine Ability Secret Manual. But to Ji Tianxing, these ancient books were also treasures. He had been staying in the library, eagerly flipping through the books. Through the scanning of his divine sense, he had flipped through over 10,000 books in a short 2 days. He also had a deeper understanding of the local customs of the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom, the Great Yen Empire, and the North Sky region. Unfortunately, other than the North Sky region, very little was known about the situation of the other regions. Not to mention the entire Boundless Heaven continent as well as the regions outside the continent, there was almost no contact. Ji Tianxing was a little disappointed as he thought to himself, Yuan Qingkong is just a small city lord, his authority and status are too low. He is not qualified to come in contact with the news of the Boundless Heaven continent and the outside world. Perhaps even the Ning clan of the Tianshui County knew very little about the news outside the continent. What exactly had the current God realm become? What happened in the past 1,000 years? Ji Tianxing walked out of the library and bathed in the setting sun. Looking at the lotus pond and bamboo forest not far away, he pondered silently. How many of the 18 divine kings who followed me back then have fallen? How many of them were still alive? When can I recover to the Divine King realm, leave the boundless heaven continent, and return to the Tianshan region of the primal chaos continent? Long before ascending, Ji Tianxing had a plan. After returning to the God realm, he would first recover his strength at the fastest speed and strive to return to the Divine King realm as soon as possible. Then he would return to the Tianshan region of the primal chaos continent, find his old subordinates, and investigate the whereabouts of the 18 divine kings. Finally, he would find out the truth of the matter back then, gather the strongest forces and take revenge on the enemy. This was just the general idea. The specific details would depend on the situation. Moreover, this plan could not be realized in 3 to 5 years. It would definitely take a long time. Ji Tianxing was pondering. At this time, the expressions of 2 messenger guards flashed past in a hurry. When passing by him, the 2 hesitated for a moment. After bowing and greeting him, the 2 of them quickly flew away. Ji Tianxing saw the anxious expressions on their faces and guessed that something had happened when they went straight to the city master's study. However, the Qi family had just taken over Qingshan City, and there were many things happening in the past 2 days. Similar situations happened from time to time and he was used to it. He did not think too much about it. He stepped across the stone bridge and the tree-lined path in the garden and returned to his residence. Just as he walked out of the garden, he saw the 2 messenger guards return in a hurry. When the 2 guards saw him, they had no choice but to stop and bow again. "Greetings, master." After bowing, the 2 were about to leave. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked, "Wait. Why are you so flustered?" The 2 guards did not dare to leave and could only answer truthfully. "Master, a tragedy happened last night in Shufeng town, 100 miles south of the city. For some reason, more than 100 people disappeared without a trace. More than 300 spiritual birds and beasts died quietly and turned into a pool of blood. After the city guards went to investigate, they found more than 100 skeletons in a valley not far from the town. The skeletons were placed on the ground and pieced together into the shape of a sword. It was very strange." Ji Tianxing frowned immediately and had a bad premonition. What should come will come in the end. After muttering to himself, he asked again, "Then what did the city lord say after you reported it to him?" The 2 guards quickly replied, "After this incident, the tens of thousands of people in Shufeng town are in danger and are uneasy. The city master sent 300 city guards to guard Shufeng town. He strictly protected the town and prevented the news from leaking. At the same time, the city master sent a team of masters to investigate the specific cause and the murderer." Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood and waved his hand to let the 2 leave. The 2 guards cupped their hands and bowed. Then they quickly flew away to carry out their mission. Ji Tianxing returned to his residence and meditated in his bedroom. At the same time, he released his divine sense to envelop the city master's mansion and secretly observed the movements of the guards. When night fell, during this period of half an hour, 3 groups of messengers rushed into the city master's study. Obviously, at least 4 more things had happened and Qi Tianlong urgently needed to deal with them. In the dead of night, Qi Tianlong temporarily put down his official business and came to Ji Tianxing's residence. The 2 sat down in the living room. Qi Tianlong did not waste time and took out a communication jade slip. He went straight to the point and said, "Young Master Tianxing, Miss Ning sent back a communication jade slip. She asked me to tell you that there's some progress in that matter. But it's not clear in the jade slip. She hopes that you can go to the Ning family and talk to you face to face." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Thank you for your trouble." Qi Tianlong got up and bowed. "If there's nothing else, I won't disturb your rest. Goodbye." "Wait." Ji Tianxing raised his hand and stopped him. He asked in a low voice, "Family master, you look in a hurry and anxious. You should be in trouble." Qi Tianlong did not hide it and said with a wry smile, "Young Master Tianxing, you have sharp eyes. It seems that some people are very dissatisfied with me taking over as the city master. I've only been in office for 2 days and they can't wait to show off to me." Chapter 2897. Without Qi Tianlong's explanation, Ji Tianxing already had the answer in his heart. At this time, there were only 2 or 3 forces that dared to create a massacre in Qingshan City to show their strength to Qi Tianlong. "Tell me the specific situation." Ji Tianxing leaned on the armchair and said calmly. Qi Tianlong sorted out his thoughts and said, "It all happened last night. There were tragedies in 4 towns. Shufeng town in the south of the city, Dianfeng Town in the east, Linhai Town in the north, and Sanshan Town in the west. In these 4 towns, more than 100 people disappeared for no reason. More than 300 spiritual birds and beasts quietly turned into blood water. When the massacre happened, no one in the whole town noticed. After that, I sent the city guards to investigate. They found the skeletons of the missing people in the valley near the town. More than 100 complete skeletons were placed on the ground in the shape of a sharp sword. After a pause, Qi Tianlong added another sentence. The tips of the 4 sharp swords were all pointing in the direction of Qingshan City. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing frowned and guessed the reason. He looked at Qi Tianlong calmly and asked, 4 towns were attacked at the same time in 4 directions of Qingshan City. Even the number of people and spiritual beasts that died was the same. The sharp swords of the skeletons were all pointed at Qingshan City. This is no longer a conspiracy but a naked threat. Qi Tianlong nodded in agreement and said with indignation, the other party's intention is very clear. They are unscrupulous to destroy the stability of Qingshan City and deliberately create chaos and panic. Previously, I promised the imperial envoy that I would maintain the stability of Qingshan City and that there would not be the slightest mistake. I just took over Qingshan City for 2 days and the other party has already created 4 tragedies. If the news spreads, everyone will think that I, Qi Tianlong, have no ability and no qualification to manage Qingshan City. Not only will the imperial envoy be humiliated, but the 3rd prince will also lose face. Ji Tianxing added, this is only the other party's first move. They first disturbed the 4 towns outside the city. The sharp swords of the 4 skeletons were all pointed at Qingshan City. It means that if we don't give in, their next target will be Qingshan City. Qi Tianlong also thought of this point and said with a serious face, now that only 4 small towns are in trouble, I can still send a large number of city guards to block the news. However, if the other party sneaked into Qingshan City, killed the innocent and created a bloody massacre, there was no way the news could be kept under wraps. The city was about to fall into chaos. At that time, as the new city lord, I will have no choice but to abdicate in order to give an explanation to the people. The imperial envoy and the 3rd prince would lose face because of this. In fact, the king might even punish me in his rage. Ji Tianxing's expression was calm as he said, that's right, the consequences are just as you predicted. Although you have been wronged, these tragedies were deliberately caused by someone. However, the common people didn't understand and didn't care about this. The monarch did not want to know the reason, he only wanted to know the result. He only knows that you don't have the ability to govern Qingshan City well. Qi Tianlong thought for a moment and said, the other party did this to give me a warning. If it wasn't necessary, they wouldn't have started a massacre in Qingshan City. This means that they didn't want to make a big deal out of it to prevent the 3rd prince and the king from investigating the culprit. They were only pressuring me, hoping that I would back off. Ji Tianxing nodded and asked, who do you think the culprit is? Qi Tianlong was silent for a moment, then said word by word, the Blood Sword Sect. Ji Tianxing also agreed with this answer. However, he still asked, why don't you suspect Princess Tianfeng? Qi Tianlong shook his head and said with certainty, he has the guts, but he doesn't necessarily have the qualifications. This matter is too risky for him. Once he does this, he will completely offend the 3rd prince and his future will be difficult to protect. However, the Bloodsword sect is different. They have already pledged allegiance to another prince and are competing with the 3rd prince for the throne. They are used to offending the 3rd prince. Ji Tianxing revealed a look of praise and said with a gratified tone, I'm very pleased that you can remain calm, not panic in the face of danger, and even analyze the pros and cons of this matter. This way, when I leave Azure Mountain City, you will also be able to control it. Also, you have to remember that even if we know that the Bloodsword sect is behind this, we can only tacitly agree to it. We don't have any evidence, so we can't use this to attack the Bloodsword sect. The Bloodsword sect can just throw the blame to the Black Mermaids. After all, the Black Mermaids have already taken the blame, so adding another one won't matter. Qi Tianlong nodded solemnly, indicating that he understood. Shortly after, he frowned and asked, Young Master Tianxing, you've decided to leave? Yes. Ji Tianxing said calmly, I'll be leaving tomorrow morning. You have to cooperate with me to put on a show. The momentum must be great. Qi Tianlong was a little unwilling and asked, what if the other party's target is me and not you? Do you really have to leave? Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Don't think that you're lucky. I'm the target of public criticism. The Blood Sword sect and Princess Tianfeng aren't stupid. They know that I killed Yuan Qingkong and his son Yenzong, consecrator Shi, and the elders of the Blood Sword sect. The person they want to get rid of the most is me. Only when I leave Azure Mountain City and allow them to surround and kill me will they let the Qi family go." Qi Tianlong was silent for a long time. His heart was filled with anger and unwillingness as he clenched his fists tightly. That despicable Princess Tianfeng and the Blood Sword sect. I only hate that I'm weak and that my words carry no weight. If there comes a day when I have the authority and power, I'll definitely destroy Princess Tianfeng and the Blood Sword sect. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said with a smile, "I'm glad that you have such intentions. However, you don't have to do this. You just focus on managing Azure Mountain City and wait for the show. At most you'll get your wish in half a year." Qi Tianlong was shocked as he stared at Ji Tianxing with his mouth agape. He simply didn't dare believe that Ji Tianxing would actually be so confident to speak such bold words. In half a year he would be able to destroy Princess Tianfeng and the Blood Sword sect? Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? He was just a heavenly god, not a high divine lord. He wasn't even a high divine lord with authority. How was it possible? Qi Tianlong couldn't believe it. However, ever since he met Ji Tianxing he had seen Ji Tianxing create one miracle after another. He still had some expectations and a trace of hope in his heart. Since young Master Tianxing is so confident, I'll wait for the good news. Qi Tianlong said with emotion as he bowed deeply to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "The Ning family and the third prince are two great helpers. If you can grasp them well you might be able to become a princess in the future. In short, be careful and seek stability first." Chapter 2898. This was Ji Tianxing's last lesson to Qi Tianlong before he left. Qi Tianlong learned a lot from it and engraved it in his heart. After discussing business, Qi Tianlong took his leave and continued to deal with government affairs. Of course, he did not forget to prepare a mighty guard of honor according to Ji Tianxing's instructions. Midnight. Qi Huangji received the news that Ji Tianxing would be leaving early the next morning. He hurried to Ji Tianxing's residence and took out a purple jade box. "Brother Tianxing, why are you in such a hurry to leave? If only you gave me 2 more days I would have prepared all the gifts." Apparently, Qi Huangji's gift was not ready and was only 80% complete. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing was leaving early the next morning so he could only regret it. Ji Tianxing reached out and took the box. He smiled and said, "All right, I'm already very happy that you have such intentions. No matter how many treasures and resources there are, they are just worldly possessions and are not as precious as a person's heart." Qi Huangji's heart was moved when he heard this. He said emotionally, "That's right. Brother, you are absolutely right. Just like how you are indebted to the Qi family, even billions of divine stones cannot be exchanged for that. With your wisdom and talent, anyone who can get your help can easily be made a marquis, let alone a governor or a princess." Ji Tianxing just smiled and did not comment. In fact, Qi Huangji did not know what he was capable of. Being made a marquis in a small kingdom? That was too insulting. Of course, Qi Huangji was not to blame. He did not mean to underestimate Ji Tianxing. He could only blame himself for being born lowly and being ignorant. He would probably be a frog in a well for the rest of his life. "Brother Tianxing, I know that you will travel the world and fly higher and farther in the future. So there are only 3 rare treasures in the gifts I prepared for you. The other things are divine crystals, all kinds of pills, talismans and formation plates that you need for cultivation. Unfortunately, those cultivation resources only add up to about 5 billion. Moreover, the quality of those divine crystals is slightly low, and the divine energy they contain isn't too abundant." Qi Huangji introduced the items in the treasure box with an apprehensive and ashamed expression. He felt that he had let Ji Tianxing down. Ji Tianxing naturally knew why those divine crystals were of a slightly lower grade. It was him who did it. He couldn't say it out loud, so he could only comfort Qi Huangji. "You don't have to blame yourself. This gift is already very valuable. I'm very satisfied." Seeing that he was truly happy, Qi Huangji felt relieved. The next morning the sun had just risen. The sky had just brightened, and on the plaza of the city lord's mansion, there was already a guard of honor of 200 people neatly lined up. After a burst of gongs and drums, the city lord, the young city lord and Ji Tianxing appeared. In front of the honor guard, countless guards and servants, Qi Tianlong loudly announced a piece of news. From this day onwards, young Master Tianxing will resign from his position in the Qi clan and leave Qingshan City. The Qi clan was very grateful for young Master Tianxing's help, and were very reluctant to let him leave. They had repeatedly urged him to stay. However, young Master Tianxing was a dragon among men with a bright future. Naturally, he couldn't be trapped in a small Qingshan city. The Qi clan didn't want to hinder young Master Tianxing's future, so they respectfully sent young Master Tianxing out of the city. I wish young Master Tianheng good fortune and that he will be able to overcome misfortune and become famous in the near future. Of course, in order to thank young Master Tianxing for his wholehearted help, the Qi clan had also prepared an extremely generous gift. As for what the gift was and how much it was worth, it was inconvenient for them to announce it to the public. Suddenly hearing this news, the crowd was in an uproar and everyone was shocked. No one expected that at the most glorious moment of the Qi clan, young Master Tianxing, who had contributed the most to the Qi clan, would leave. What was going on? Could it be that young Master Tianxing was also going to follow the example of the legendary hermit who retired after achieving success? Or could it be that young Master Tianxing and the Qi clan were at odds, and had a dispute on the distribution of benefits? Or even after the Qi clan gained both fame and fortune, he wanted to kick away the greatest contributor? All in all, 1,000 people had 1,000 faces and everyone had different guesses. However, no one believed Qi Tianlong's words. It was too dignified. Was he trying to fool a 3-year-old child? Fortunately, these people were all from the city lord's mansion, and could be considered as Qi Tianlong's retainers and servants. Even if they had guesses and criticisms, they would only talk about it in private and wouldn't dare to spread it casually. But Qi Tianlong had made such a big scene, and the entire Qingshan city's people would soon know about this matter. At that time, when 2 to 3 million people talked about it, it would be hard to stop. There would definitely be thousands of guesses. In fact, there would be a lot of malicious, insidious, and irresponsible rumors and slanders. This point, even the retainers and servants of the city lord's mansion could foresee. As the city lord, how could Qi Tianlong not foresee it? But he could only do this because this was Qi Tianxing's request to let him cooperate with the show. It was to let everyone think that Qi Tianxing and the Qi clan didn't break up peacefully. There must be some unspeakable reason that the two sides parted ways and turned hostile. In this way, it would fulfill some people's wishes and the Qi clan would be safer. When Qi Tianlong learned of Qi Tianxing's request, he immediately objected and rejected it. He was very clear that this would definitely destroy Qi Tianxing's reputation and affect his prestige. But he couldn't resist Qi Tianxing's persuasion and insistence, and could only agree and do as he was told. In this way, his guilt and gratitude towards Qi Tianxing became even more unforgettable. Soon the sun rose slowly. Qi Tianlong and his son led the guard of honor, escorting Qi Tianxing out of the city lord's mansion, and walked towards the south city gate. Along the way, countless commoners who heard the news and rushed over crowded the streets to watch and discuss. The news spread very quickly. 2 hours later, when the guard of honor left the south city gate and respectfully sent off Qi Tianxing, half of the people in the city knew. Qingshan City was bustling with noise and excitement. Millions of people were discussing, and many large and small forces and families were also secretly analyzing. Of course, countless spies lurking in Qingshan City also reported this news to their respective forces. In short, from today onwards, Qi Tianxing and the Qi clan broke off, and no longer had anything to do with each other. At least in the eyes of the public, this was the case. Qi Tianlong and his son stood outside the city gate, watching Qi Tianxing fly into the sky and disappear into the horizon. Their eyes were full of guilt and reluctance. This was not an act but a true display of emotions. But unfortunately, in the eyes of others, they felt that the father and son's acting skills were superb. After standing outside the city gate for a long time, Qi Tianlong gave the order to return home. The mighty guard of honor stopped beating gongs and drums, and returned to the city lord's mansion in silence. Hundreds of thousands of onlookers also dispersed. This matter ended here. Everyone knew that for a long time Qingshan City would return to peace. Without the monstrous Tianxing, Qingshan City would be as calm as water, no longer exciting. Chapter 2899. 6 hours later. Qi Tianxing had already flown 500,000 miles away from Green Mountain City. He had already removed his disguise and returned to his original appearance. He was wearing a white robe with black hair and black eyes. He was a handsome human god. Moreover, he was riding a majestic black dragon, galloping high up in the sky. Now that he had left the Qi family in Green Mountain City, there was no need for him to disguise himself. He believed that the Blood Sword sect and Princess Tianfeng would be watching him leave Green Mountain City. Even if he didn't use his divine sense, he could guess it. There must be a lot of spies and scouts in the mountains not far from him watching his movements. Furthermore, those people had already heard the news and knew that he would pass by Tianfeng County before going to Xianxia County. However, this was the result he wanted. The black dragon flew south. He sat cross-legged on the dragon's back and meditated with his eyes closed. The silver-haired white dragon waited beside him. Seeing his master so confident and relaxed, the white dragon couldn't help but ask, "Master, if we leave in such a big way, people will think that we have fallen out with the Qi family. Aren't you worried that Princess Tianfeng and the Blood Sword sect can't wait to kill us? Although you are powerful and don't fear their schemes, we are still weak. But after all, we are alone and weak. Those two forces have many experts and are local tyrants. We will definitely be at a disadvantage." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said indifferently, "Although I have never met Princess Tianfeng and the Blood Sword sect, I don't know their strength. However, this is just a small divine nation. Even in the entire Great Yan Empire, the most powerful people are only high divine lords. Even peak divine lords might not exist. God kings are unheard of. Tell me, what do I have to fear?" The white dragon was stunned and said with surprise, "Master, it seems that you don't want to keep a low profile and develop? If you go south in such a big way, you will definitely attract endless slaughter. Are you going to kill your way to Xianxia City or even the entire Blood Flame divine nation?" Ji Tianxing didn't deny it and said indifferently, "As a true god and heavenly god, I need to keep a low profile and develop. Now that Master has already recovered to the Divine Lord realm, what need is there to have too many misgivings? If these gods of the non-human kind insist on seeking death, I don't mind killing them until their heads roll and staining the mountains and rivers red with blood. Anyway, the more divine race powerhouses I kill, the faster your master's strength increases." Bai Long's eyes sparkled as he said expectantly, "If that's the case, then it's going to be interesting." Looking at the entire Bloodfire Divine Kingdom, he reckoned that his master would be unstoppable. However, this kind of massacre is quite different from your style 1,000 years ago. Back then, Kenshin was also decisive in killing, and millions of corpses fell to his sword. However, the Kenshin would only kill those who deserved to be killed. They would never kill the innocent, nor would they allow the killing to continue. In principle, we will exercise restraint. As for the current Ji Tianxing, White Dragon always felt that he had let go of himself and was leaning towards the devil. He thought to himself, could it be that teacher was affected by the devouring divine ability and his deity heart was demonized? This shouldn't be the case. Master has the heart of a divine king. How could he be so easily bewitched? At this moment, a figure flashed beside Ji Tianxing. A graceful fiery red figure appeared. This person was Jiku. She wore a fiery red dress and her scarlet hair reached her waist. Her entire body was bathed in holy light. Little White, don't let your imagination run wild. Big brother Tianxing definitely won't go berserk, nor will he become a great devil. He just can't wait and wants to step out of the boundless heaven continent as soon as possible to find his old subordinates and take revenge on the 5 divine kings. In addition, although he never mentions Wuhan, this is his biggest worry. He's worried about Wuhan's safety. He just wants to recover to the divine king realm as soon as possible so that he can go to the dragon realm to find Wuhan. Jiku stood beside Ji Tianxing and explained the reason in a calm tone. Only then did White Dragon come to a realization. He nodded repeatedly and said, I see. Master's wife understands teacher's thoughts better. Jiku nodded slightly and said with a somewhat gloomy expression, Actually, senior sister and I both understand big brother Tianxing's thoughts. We share his anxieties and worries. Unfortunately, the speed of our strength improvement is still too slow. It's difficult to help him at the moment. Hearing this, the White Dragon also showed a look of shame. The atmosphere was a little gloomy. Ji Tianxing smiled and comforted them. You don't have to blame yourselves. Compared to all the other gods, your growth is already fast enough. We can't settle down in the short term. You just have to work hard and cultivate. As for plundering cultivation resources and treasures, I can do this kind of thing. To put it simply, he would be outside for the short term. Jiku Yunyao and the others only needed to cultivate in seclusion in the divine pagoda and improve their strength. In the future, if Ji Tianxing could find his old subordinates or establish a powerful force, they would come out to help. This was the best choice. At this moment, in the vast sea of clouds ahead, a bloody light suddenly lit up the sky. Whoosh! A vast expanse of crimson light with a radius of 10,000 kilometers swept over from all directions, blocking the black dragon's path. In the dazzling bloody light, hundreds of figures could be vaguely seen. The leaders were two divine lord powerhouses with tyrannical auras. The one on the left was 100 feet tall and his whole body was golden like a giant ape. The divine lord on the right was more than 30 feet tall and wore a purple robe and a bronze mask. His body was as straight as a sword and he held a crimson sword in his arms. His aura was extremely fierce. The other 100 or so people were all heavenly god realm experts dressed in tight-fitting black clothes and wearing skull masks. Under the cover of the bloody light, these people sealed off the sky for thousands of miles and blocked Black Dragon's path. The Black Dragon was forced to stop. He maintained a distance of 100 miles from that group of people and remained vigilant. Ji Tianxing, Ji Ku and White Dragon all frowned and looked at the bloody light with murderous intent in their eyes. It's rare that they can wait until now. How long have they been waiting outside the city? White Dragon's face was as cold as ice and he said in a low voice, "They are indeed the bastards of the Blood Sword sect. From the looks of it, the massacre that happened in the 4 small towns was done by this group of people." Jika's gaze swept across the experts and finally landed on the 2 divine lords. Her eyes were a little serious as she warned, "Big brother Tianxing, those are 2 middle-level divine lords. You have to be careful." Ji Tianxing smiled disapprovingly and said with a relaxed expression, "One is a 5th-level divine lord and the other is a 6th-level divine lord. There's nothing to worry about. Moreover, they are not the only ones waiting to ambush us here." Ji Ku and White Dragon immediately understood his meaning and became even more vigilant. At the same time, the purple-robed divine lord and the giant also looked at Black Dragon with sharp eyes and sized up Ji Tianxing's group. The purple-robed divine lord was rather surprised and a look of astonishment flashed across his eyes. How could this be? Did we find the wrong person? That shouldn't be. Ever since that kid left Azure Mountain City, our spies have been following him. We can't be wrong. End of chapter. Chapter 2900. The purple-robed divine lord's expression was very strange. News from more than 10 spies proved that Ji Tianxing had left Azure Mountain City alone. He didn't have a mount, companions or followers. And now not only was the white-robed kid riding a black dragon, he also had 2 companions. Most importantly, the white-robed youth was a human. He didn't look like a revered Tianxing at all. At this moment the purple-robed divine lord couldn't help but wonder if he had stopped the wrong person. Seeing the purple-robed divine lord in a daze, the 300-meter-tall divine lord giant ape sent a voice transmission in puzzlement. "Lord Kenshin, what's the matter?" The purple-robed divine lord wearing a bronze mask was known as Lord Kenshin. He was the left protector of the Blood Sword sect. 500 years ago his strength had already reached the 6th level of the divine lord realm. For the past few hundred years he had been nurturing his divine Tao foundation, accumulating strength and comprehension, preparing to break through to the 7th stage. Once he succeeded, he would be promoted to a high divine lord. He was one of the 4 elders of the Blood Sword sect and specialized in the Blood Sword Manual's Heart Demon Sword. His attainments were unfathomable. Once the Heart Demon Blood Sword was used, not only could it slay the body of a divine spirit, it could also use the Heart Demon to destroy the soul, making it impossible to guard against. In the 5,000 years since he became famous, the number of divine lord experts who died under his sword was at least 2,000 if not 3,000. Normally, Lord Kenshin would stay in the Blood Sword sect's main altar to cultivate and nurture his divine Tao. Only when there was an important mission or an extremely troublesome expert would the Blood Sword sect send him out. After a month of fighting, Ji Tianxing had become an extremely troublesome expert in the eyes of the Blood Sword sect. But the scene in front of him made Lord Kenshin somewhat dazed. Hearing the giant ape divine lord's question, he immediately regained his senses and shook his head. "The information I received was that Tianxing left Azure Mountain City alone. But this human youth in front of us doesn't look like Tianxing. Not only is he riding a black dragon, he also has two companions. The giant ape divine lord nodded and said in a deep voice, "You mean we intercepted the wrong target?" Lord Kenshin nodded and said, "That's possible. Not only was Tianxing powerful, but he was also good at scheming. I suspect that he may have gotten rid of the spies and quietly escaped. As for the three people in front of us, they should be the bait that he deliberately set up." Sir God Giant Ape grinned and sneered with a bloodthirsty face. "If that's the case, it means those three guys are related to Tianxing? Then what are we waiting for? Take them down immediately and torture them until they reveal Tianxing's whereabouts." Kenshin-kun was an executioner who killed people like scything flax. How could he be merciful? However, he gestured to Sir God Giant Ape to not act rashly. "There's no rush for now. Let's observe the situation first. There's another group of people who seem to be more anxious than us. Where is it?" Sir God Giant Ape immediately became alert and released his consciousness to search around. Meanwhile, in the sky to the northwest, there was also a black shadow that was thousands of feet long. It was rushing over as fast as lightning. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the black shadow came close and stopped in the sky 100 miles away from the black dragon. After the brilliance dissipated, the black shadow could be seen clearly. It was a divine vessel. The divine vessel was simple and there were no obvious features. There was no emblem on the body of the divine vessel, so it was hard to tell which force it belonged to. However, Ji Tianxing did not need to think too much to guess that the divine vessel was most likely sent by Princess Tianfeng. However, in order to avoid arousing suspicion, Infanta Tianfeng had concealed the characteristics and insignia of the divine worship. Even the masters and experts on the divine battleship would not be Princess Tianfeng's men. They were most likely assassins that she had secretly trained or people that she had borrowed from other forces. Just as expected, after the hatch of the divine vessel opened, hundreds of elite experts flew out. They were all at LV7 or LV8 Heavenly God Realm. These elite experts were all wearing black armor and helmets that covered their faces. Only their eyes could be seen. The two leading experts were also Sir Gods. They were middle-aged men who were more than 10 feet tall. Both of them were wearing pitch-black armor and the same black iron mask. They looked very mysterious. "Tianxing, you won't be able to escape today. Just surrender." The moment they flew out of the divine vessel, the leading Sir God in black armor shouted with murderous intent. However, when he saw the situation clearly, his body shook and he was stunned on the spot. "Who are you? Where is that bastard Tianxing?" The other Sir God in black armor pointed at Ji Tianxing and the other two and asked in a dignified tone. At the same time, the two Sir Gods saw a crimson light that covered the sky 100 miles away. In the crimson light, there were two Sir Gods leading hundreds of black-robed experts. Seeing this, the two Sir Gods in black armor looked at each other and instantly understood. The group of people shrouded in the crimson light had the same intention. They were here to kill Tianxing. Everyone was silent and the atmosphere was a bit strange. Then Ji Tianxing stood up and looked at the two groups of people calmly. He said loudly, "I don't care where you are from or what your purpose is. I just want to say that you have found the wrong person. I am City Lord Xiangning of the Raging Flame Divine Country. I am on a business trip to your country and I just passed by." Ji Tianxing's voice was calm and contained strong confidence and majesty. Even Ji Ku and Bai Long couldn't find any loopholes, let alone the people of the Blood Sword sect and the Princess of Tianfeng. The two groups of people were stunned on the spot. The expressions of the experts and the four Sir Gods became quite interesting. This guy is full of confidence. He doesn't seem to be lying. Did we really find the wrong person? That's possible. Tianxing, that bastard, has always been crafty and cunning. I think that bastard might have escaped by another route. The City Lord of Xiangning in front of us just happened to pass by here unknowingly. Tianxing, that bastard is too treacherous. If we kill City Lord Xiangning directly, we will cause trouble for the Raging Flame Divine Country. Don't trust City Lord Xiangning too much. Maybe he is Tianxing in disguise? Tianxing is sinister and cunning. Who can tell the truth from the lies? Yes. Don't let your guard down. Everyone was discussing secretly through voice transmission. Most of them were fooled by Ji Tianxing and believed that he was the city lord of a neighboring country. However, Kenshin was still suspicious and didn't want to believe it so easily. At this moment, Ji Tianxing took out another black iron order and waved it in front of the crowd. He said righteously, "This is my city leader's order. All of you take a good look. I have an important mission and will be heading to your country's capital soon. I don't care who you are, get out of my way. If you dare to disrespect this seat will definitely report to your king and punish you." After that, Ji Tianxing put away the dark iron order and ordered Black Dragon to fly south. The two Sir Gods in black armor hesitated. They wanted to stop Black Dragon, but they didn't dare to take the risk. The two of them were stunned and discussed secretly, but they couldn't make up their minds. Even the people of the Blood Sword sect seemed to be stunned, standing in place as they watched Black Dragon leave. Chapter 2901. Black Dragon left unhurriedly. 100 breaths later he was 20,000 miles away. At this moment, Lord Kenshin was about to leave with the people of Blood Sword sect. The two black-armored divine sovereigns hurried forward and respectfully greeted them. "Seniors, please wait." Lord Kenshin and Lord Giant Ape stopped and turned to look at the two black-armored divine sovereigns. "What's the matter? What do you want?" Lord Kenshin's tone was calm, cold, and indifferent. Lord Giant Ape's temper flared and a dangerous glint appeared in his eyes. The two black-armored divine sovereigns hurriedly cupped their hands and explained. "Seniors, please calm your anger. We have no ill intentions. There are some things that we have a tacit understanding of. However, we would like to ask the two seniors, why didn't you stop City Lord Tranquility and let him leave so easily?" Lord Kenshin sneered, "Fools." He announced his identity and took out his identity token, indicating that he was the city lord of a neighboring country. Who would dare to attack them? Not to mention killing them, even injuring and detaining them would cause a dispute between the two countries. At that time, even the ruler would have to apologize to the ruler of the neighboring country. Can you bear the consequences? The two black-armored divine sovereigns froze for a moment before smiling embarrassedly. "So that's how it is. Senior, you're so considerate. Since Senior has decided, we won't overstep our boundaries. We'll see you off." The two didn't dare to say anything more. They bowed and respectfully saw the people of Blood Sword sect off. Whoosh! The sky was filled with bloody light as it flew toward the south. The two black-armored divine sovereigns stood in place and watched the people of Blood Sword sect disappear into the horizon. After a moment of silence, the divine sovereign on the left said, "All right, there's no need to watch anymore. The princess told us not to provoke the people of Blood Sword sect. Contact other spies and find a way to investigate Tianxing's whereabouts." After saying that, he turned to leave. The black-armored divine sovereign on the right trembled as he suddenly thought of something. "Hey Ba, have you seen the city lord token of a neighboring country?" The divine emperor called Hey Ba frowned in confusion. "I've never seen him before. Why do you ask?" The divine monarch on the right said with a burning gaze, "I've never seen him before, so we can't tell if that city lord Xiangning is real or not." However, the people of the Blood Sword sect had always been arrogant and despotic. They also have the same doubts. Why would they let that person go so easily? Despot vaguely understood what he meant and said in a low voice, "Qi Liuxing, you mean, the people of the Blood Sword sect lied to us? They don't believe that city lord Xiangning at all. They just don't want us to find out. Actually, they didn't go home, but went to hunt down that tranquil city lord?" Qi Liuxing quickly nodded and said in a serious tone, "That's right. If we chase after them now, we should still be able to make it." Hey Ba was a bit hesitant as he worriedly asked, "But by the time we get there, the Blood Sword sect will have already taken down city lord Xiangning. Don't tell me that we can snatch someone from the Blood Sword sect?" Qi Liuxing sneered, "The Blood Sword sect has been like the sun in the sky in recent years. Of course we can't provoke them. However, we can watch from the sidelines and see who that city lord Xiangning is. If we're lucky enough, we might even be able to find Tianxing's whereabouts. Only then can we complete the princess's mission." Despot pondered for a moment before clenching his teeth and making up his mind. "Fine, then we'll do as you say. Let's take a gamble." "That's right." Qi Liuxing revealed a gratified smile. Then the two returned to the divine ship with over 100 black-armored experts and chased toward the south. Meanwhile, Black Dragon was carrying Ji Tianxing, Ji Ku and White Dragon speeding through the sky. Suddenly, a bloody light burst out from the sea of clouds behind them. Heart Kenshin led over 100 elite experts and chased after them as fast as lightning. The distance between the two sides was constantly shrinking. 8,000 li, 5,000 li, 3,000 li. Soon the distance between the two sides was reduced to 100 li. Heart Kenshin shouted in a booming voice, "City Lord Xiangning, please wait." As he shouted, Sir God Giant Ape and the other experts spread out and encircled him. When the two sides were still 20,000 li apart, Ji Tianxing sensed that the people of Blood Sword sect were following them. Only now did he have Black Dragon stop and turn to look at Heart Kenshin. Hee, this guy is indeed not easy to deceive. He's still caught up. Ji Tianxing sneered, cold killing intent flashing in his eyes. White Dragon and Ji Ku both nodded inwardly with a sneer on their lips. This guy just escaped a calamity and doesn't know it yet. He's actually rushing to his death. His courage is commendable. This guy is very strong. He's either an elder or a protector of Blood Sword sect. While the three were conversing, Heart Kenshin had already caught up. He looked at Ji Tianxing with a faint smile and asked in a playful tone, "May I ask for City Lord Xiangning's name? Also, can I have a look at your identity token?" Ji Tianxing raised an eyebrow and sneered disdainfully, "Who do you think you are? You think you're worthy to ask for my name and see my City Lord token?" Heart Kenshin's face turned red from the humiliation and his eyes flashed with killing intent. He didn't bother to keep up the pretense and sneered, You dare to be so arrogant in your own country's territory? You really don't know the meaning of death. I don't care if you're the real City Lord Xiangning or a fake, I can't let you go. Men, capture him for me." Heart Kenshin waved his hand and the giant ape divine lord and hundreds of elite experts pounced on Black Dragon with murderous intent. Everyone waved their swords, spears, swords and halberds, splashing out divine arts that blotted out the sky as they surrounded Ji Tianxing's group. Most of the divine art shadows that blotted out the sky were multicolored and had a variety of elemental powers. There were only 10 experts who cultivated the sword arts of the Blood Sword sect, and all of them were elites. Ji Tianxing immediately realized that only Xen Kenshin and the 10 experts were disciples of the Blood Sword sect. The giant ape divine lord and the 90 black-clothed experts were either vassals of the Blood Sword sect or helpers invited from other forces. "A bunch of reckless fools, I'll send you to heaven," Ji Tianxing sneered. His wide sleeves fluttered, and his palms instantly shot out thousands of dazzling golden sword lights. Swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, thousands of golden sword lights had sealed off an area of 250 kilometers around them. They were as dazzling as the scorching sun in the sky. The sword lights crisscrossed and shuttled back and forth, mercilessly killing many black-clothed experts. The overwhelming divine spell shadows were immediately destroyed by the sword light, and a violent shockwave burst forth. Then one after another, the black-clothed experts were cut in half by the dazzling golden sword light. Blood splattered everywhere. Ji Ku also took out her origin stone divine spear and attacked with all her strength. She waved her divine spear with all her might, thrusting out 360 sky-piercing spear shadows in a row. Wherever the sky-piercing spear shadows went, countless divine lights were shattered. The 5-colored divine flames swept across, and the experts that came into contact with the nirvana and heaven-burning divine flames were immediately turned into pitch-black charcoal. Bai Long also transformed into a silver-white divine dragon and shuttled through the sky like lightning, fiercely fighting on the battlefield. Chapter 2902. Both parties had only fought for 100 breaths of time, but the world was already dyed red. Nearly half of the black-robed experts died on the spot. Shrapnel and blood mist filled the sky. The smell of blood filled the air within a 1,000-mile radius. Ji Tianxing controlled the divine power of heaven and earth and guided the light of the stars to form 10,000 swords into a sword formation. The sword formation sealed off a 1,000-mile radius and killed everything mercilessly. The two Sir Gods, Xen Jian and Giant Ape, were still able to resist the power of the heaven-destroying sword formation and would not be defeated in a short period of time. However, most of the hundreds of black-clothed experts were covered in cuts and bruises from the sword light, dripping with blood. Ji Ku Hei Long and Bai Long also used their ultimate moves and attacked the black-robed experts fiercely. The black-robed experts were exhausted from resisting the attacks of the 10,000 swords and did not have the strength to fight back. As a result, they suffered heavy casualties and their numbers decreased rapidly. The two Sir Gods, Xen Jian and Giant Ape, did not expect Ji Tianxing to be so powerful. Ji Tianxing controlled the 10,000 swords with a flick of his finger and formed the heaven-destroying sword formation in a breath's time. This kind of method was also rarely seen even among middle-level divine lords. At the beginning, the two of them were exhausted from resisting the attacks of the 10,000 swords and were forced to panic and lose their composure. However, the two of them were experienced middle-level Sir Gods. Even if they were in a dangerous situation, they could quickly stabilize themselves. After 100 breaths of time, the two of them had already seen the pattern of the 10,000 swords movement. It became easier and more confident to resist the attacks of the 10,000 swords. The two of them finally resisted the power of the sword formation and had the time to protect the black-robed experts. The situation was in a temporary stalemate. Ji Ku and Bai Long's attacks were also neutralized by the two Sir Gods. At that moment, Ji Tianxing wielded the Sky Barrier sword and cast a Sword Dao divine skill to attack the two Sir Gods, Xin Jian and Giant Ape. Heaven-splitting sword. The Burial of Heaven's sword swung and released a 1,000-foot-long golden light. It carried the power to destroy everything and slashed at Sir God Giant Ape. The sword light was as bright as the sun, and invisible sword essence surged for 1,000 miles. It made one's heart tremble and soul tremble in fear. Before the giant sword arrived, it had already locked onto Sir God Giant Ape's aura. Being in the heaven-destroying sword formation, he was already suppressed by the sword formation and his strength was reduced by 30%. Seeing the giant sword coming at him, it was too late for him to teleport away. He could only block it with all his might. Roar. Ape arm covers the sky. Sir God Giant Ape roared and raised his huge and thick arms to block in front of him. Golden light burst out of his body and condensed into a wall-like shield in front of his arms. Boom. The giant sword slashed the golden protective wall with a thunderous boom. The destructive power sent Sir God Giant Ape flying as blood spurted out of his 7 orifices. The golden light barrier also collapsed instantly, exploding into millions of golden light fragments that scattered in all directions. A dark golden storm erupted within the sword formation. There were more than a dozen black-clothed experts nearby. They were swept up by the dark golden storm on the spot, and their figures became blurry. 6 or 7 black-clothed experts were torn into pieces. Blood and flesh splattered all over the sky. The other 8 experts were lucky enough not to die, but they were also severely injured. Their severed limbs were wantonly thrown out. After this unexpected disaster, many black-clothed experts were filled with fear. Seeing that Mr. Kenshin was fighting with Ji Tianxing again, the surrounding black-clothed experts all retreated. Mr. Kenshin was indeed a grandmaster of the way of the sword. He used his divine thought to control the 12 dark red blood swords and attack Ji Tianxing. The 12 blood-red divine swords contained a powerful soul-sucking power. They were like blood dragons that flashed with lightning. The blood swords flew back and forth, forming a dark red sword net that enveloped Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing used his divine thought to control the swords to block the blood sword's attack. Even though the sword flashes that filled the sky were illusory, Divine Lord Heartsword's blood sword was a genuine divine weapon. But he was not at a disadvantage when facing the 12 blood swords with 100 swords. Even the soul-sucking power released by the blood-light sword net did not have much of an effect on him. Apart from his divine soul being restrained and feeling a bit of pressure, there was no possibility of him going berserk or being distracted. After 2 breaths, Mr. Kenshin and Ji Tianxing exchanged 10 moves. He frowned fiercely and his expression became incomparably solemn. He roared, "Damn little bastard. You're Tianxing. Your black sword, this sword formation and your way of the sword can't be hidden from me." Before the battle, he only suspected that City Lord Shangning was fake. He didn't dare to be sure that this person was Tianxing. But now Mr. Kenshin was 100% sure. This human youth in front of him was the mortal enemy of the blood sword sect, Tianxing. Ji Tianxing blocked Mr. Kenshin's attack while waving the Burial of Heaven toward the Divine Lord Giant Ape. He was actually able to fight against 2 with ease and was not at a disadvantage at all. Although this was because he had the initiative. While Mr. Giant Ape and the Divine Lord Heart Sword were unprepared, he directly used the heaven-destroying sword formation. But he had only used 80% of his strength. He had not used his full strength, nor had he used his trump card. The battle situation within the heaven-destroying sword formation changed again. Ji Tianxing restrained Mr. Giant Ape and the Divine Lord Heart Sword so the two could only attack with full strength. They had no time to protect the black-clothed experts. Meanwhile, Jiku, Bai Long and Black Dragon were doing their best to kill the black-clothed experts. The 40-odd black-clothed experts who were lucky enough to survive were all heavily injured and dripping with blood. After being killed by the sword formation for so long, their divine power was rapidly weakened, and their battle strength was also greatly reduced. When they were attacked by Jiku and the others again, they were unable to resist and were forced to retreat. They had no choice but to flee for their lives. As screams rang out one after another, blood blossomed one after another. The 40-odd black-clothed experts' hearts became heavier and heavier, and they became more and more desperate. One expert after another, with grief, helplessness and despair, died under the sword light and sword shadows. Unknowingly, another 100 breaths passed. Xianxia and the Divine Lord Giant Ape were still besieging Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was unharmed, but their clothes were stained with blood, and their divine power was constantly weakening. As for the black-clothed experts, more than 90% of them had been killed. Only 8 experts were still alive, but they were also fleeing for their lives and had no battle strength left. These 8 experts were all direct disciples of the Blood Sword sect. Their strength had reached the 8th level of the Heaven God realm, and their sword techniques were outstanding. Even with the help of the heaven-destroying sword formation, Jiku and the others would need to spend some time and effort to kill them. At this moment, Ji Tianxing suddenly unleashed his full strength and used his trump card. Celestial Dragon Tyrant Body. He gave a low roar and his body emitted a dazzling golden light. He instantly turned into a golden light giant that was 1,000 feet tall. The golden divine light illuminated the world, and the invisible divine power was intense and vast. Ji Tianxing was like a god of war descending from the sky, his aura oppressive and domineering to the extreme. He looked down at Xianxia and the Divine Lord Giant Ape from above and shouted coldly in an indifferent tone, "A middle-level Divine Lord is nothing more than this. If that's all you have, then obediently accept your death." This was the first time he fought with Divine Lord experts after advancing to Divine Lord. Originally he was still not too sure if he could kill Xianxia and the Divine Lord Giant Ape with his first-level Divine Lord strength. These 2 middle-level Divine Lords, one was at the 5th level and the other was at the 6th level. Furthermore, they were both old monsters that had cultivated for 10,000 years. Their strength and foundation were extremely robust. But now Ji Tianxing already had an answer. When he went all out, he was equivalent to a high-level Divine Lord. Chapter 2903. Ji Tianxing, a first-level Divine Monarch. When he unleashed his strongest power, he was actually comparable to a 7th-stage realm upper Divine Monarch. Such an outcome was truly world-shocking. Anyone in the divine world would find it unbelievable. Even Ji Tianxing himself found it unbelievable. But this was the truth. Because before he broke through to the Divine Monarch realm, he had strengthened himself to the limit of the Divine God realm. This was because he had laid the most solid foundation in the Divine God realm. In addition, he was the reincarnation of a Divine King and had the cultivation and battle experience of a Divine King. Once he entered the Divine Monarch realm, he could master all skills and communicate with heaven and earth. Moreover, he had merged with the 5 elements world and his power was endless. Under such circumstances, everything was as it should be. Damn it! He didn't use his full strength? How is this possible? He hadn't broken through to the Divine Monarch realm a month ago. Lord Kenshin looked up at Ji Tianxing, his eyes widened in shock and his body trembled. He was shocked, angry and at the same time scared. He couldn't see through his opponent at all and couldn't imagine how many trump cards he had. Lord God Giant Ape's expression was ugly and cold sweat broke out on his back. He shook his head and said, "How could such a shocking expert appear in the small green mountain city? No wonder 5th Elder and 4th Elder were killed and the City Lord's manor was flattened by him. Such a monstrous Divine Lord powerhouse is also as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns when looking across the entire Divine Kingdom." When he said this, Lord God Giant Ape had already admitted defeat in his heart. Ji Tianxing's mystery and his domineering aura had crushed Lord God Giant Ape. He admitted that he wasn't much stronger than 4th Elder. 4th Elder and Yuan Qingkong were killed by Ji Tianxing. Now he was also injured by Ji Tianxing and trapped in the sword formation. Soon he would follow in 4th Elder's footsteps. Thinking of this, Lord God Giant Ape quietly looked at Lord Kenshin and asked, "Left Guardian, the experts we brought are almost all dead. Can we still complete this mission? Why don't we preserve our strength and watch from the sidelines? Lord God Giant Ape was as big as a mountain, but he wasn't stupid. Seeing that the situation was bad, he wanted to withdraw from the battle and watch from the sidelines. Anyway, it wasn't only Bloodsword sect that wanted to kill Ji Tianxing, there was also Princess Tianfeng. As long as they spread the news, Princess Tianfeng's men would chase after Ji Tianxing and kill him in a frenzy. How could Lord Kenshin not understand Lord God Giant Ape's thoughts? However, as the left protector, he had come with a mission from the sect master. Before he set off, he had made a military order. He swore solemnly that he would take Ji Tianxing's head and return triumphantly. The sect master had high hopes for him and even rewarded him with a secret treasure. The right custodian and the other 3 elders were aware of the matter, and were secretly observing him. Once he completed the mission, not only would he have made a great contribution, but he would also be able to restore the reputation of the Bloodsword sect and restore its prestige. And now, if he were to retreat with his tail between his legs, not only would he be ridiculed by the right guardian protector and the 3 elders, but he would also turn Bloodsword sect into a laughingstock. One of the 6 great sects of Divine Kingdom couldn't even deal with a nameless consecrator? Once this news spread in the Divine Kingdom, the Bloodsword sect's reputation would be swept to the ground, and their prestige would plummet. Even the backer of the Bloodsword sect would lose face and be thoroughly disappointed, right? Thinking of this, Heartsword Divine Lord shook his head firmly. Giant Ape, we have indeed underestimated this kid's strength and methods. However, we can't retreat. We can't afford to lose face like this. Lord God Giant Ape's face was bitter. He could only nod. However, he was cursing inwardly, we can't even keep our lives. Why do we still care about face? Those bastards from the Bloodsword sect don't care about our lives at all. Every time they want to commit crimes, they use us as cannon fodder. Lord God Giant Ape wasn't a disciple of Bloodsword sect, but the leader of a second-rate force. The 90 black-clothed experts he had brought with him were the elites under his command. They were the cornerstones of his gang. It was because he had inadvertently offended the Bloodsword sect over 200 years ago, and had suffered the Bloodsword sect's crazy revenge. As a result, in order to survive and preserve the strength of his gang, he could only pledge his loyalty to Bloodsword sect. Over the past 200 years he had worked hard for Bloodsword sect, doing the dirty work of killing people and plundering. Although he had obtained many benefits, the gang's manpower had dwindled day by day. Now even the last 90 elites had been buried. He had practically become a general without an army. He wasn't that useful to Bloodsword sect anymore. He was secretly on guard. Could it be that Heartsword Divine Lord insisted on not retreating because he wanted him to be cannon fodder? Thinking of this, Lord God Giant Ape's mood became more and more irritable. Damn it! If not for the fear of Bloodsword sect's revenge, I would have turned around and left. Lord God Giant Ape frowned and cursed inwardly. At this time, Lord Kenshin took out an ancient black book from his interspatial ring. The book was as thick as a brick, but it was crudely damaged and had several holes. Even so, it still emitted an ice-cold black light and rippled with a mysterious and powerful aura. Lord Kenshin carefully held the damaged book and said with a solemn expression, "Giant Ape, this is an ancient divine item bestowed to me by the sect master, the Black Death Heavenly Book. Although it's damaged and its power is greatly reduced, it's still a supreme divine item. However, it was a monarch-level top-grade divine artifact after all. Even if it could only unleash 20% of its power, it could still kill a middle-level divine lord. Do your best to delay that brat. I will use this secret treasure to kill him in one fell swoop." As he spoke, Lord Kenshin formed a divine art with both hands, using a secret technique to activate his divine power and pour it into the Black Death Heavenly Book. Lord God Giant Ape's eyes lit up with a trace of hope. Black Death Heavenly Book? A supreme divine item? Good. Don't worry, Left Protector. I will protect you. Let's work together and defeat the enemy in one move. If he was bound to lose, of course he would have selfish motives and wanted to escape at the last moment. But if Lord Kenshin could turn the situation around, he was naturally willing to take the risk. If he succeeded, he would have made a great contribution and would be appreciated by the Bloodsword sect. He might even be able to use this contribution to become the 6th elder of the Bloodsword sect. That would be a great gain. Roar. Demonic Berserk Fist. Lord God Giant Ape roared as golden light blossomed from his body, condensing the image of a giant ape 3,000 meters tall behind him. The image of a giant ape with a majestic body and a ferocious aura was an ancient divine beast, the heaven-reaching ape. It had the power to pluck the stars and seize the moon. His eyes were crimson red, and like a mad demon he threw 108,000 punches at Ji Tianxing. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. High up in the sky, Ji Tianxing sneered coldly as he looked at the golden fist radiance that covered the sky and covered the earth. Sort of daytime. He formed a sword seal with both hands, forming a divine seal and thrusting it down at Lord God Giant Ape. Instantly, all the divine power within 100,000 miles was absorbed by him, condensing into a dazzling light as bright as the sun. The sacred golden light pierced through heaven and earth, space and time, instantly passing through the 108,000 fists before exploding in front of Lord God Giant Ape. Boom. Chapter 2904. With a deafening explosion, the giant ape divine lord was drowned by the blazing divine light. It was as if a golden sun had exploded in front of his chest. In an instant, it expanded into a 10-mile mushroom cloud that soared into the sky. The power that could destroy heaven and earth destroyed his divine body without holding back. His god body was like ice and snow under the scorching sun. It melted quickly and disappeared without a trace. The only thing that could be preserved was his godhead. But it was also blasted into pieces, a dozen fragments that were carried away by the golden light and flew in all directions. The 5th-level Divine Lord Giant Ape Divine Lord had fallen just like that. This result was within Ji Tianxing's expectations. After killing the Giant Ape Divine Lord in one move, he immediately turned to look at Heart Kenshin. He saw that Heart Kenshin had already retreated to the edge of the heaven-punishing sword formation, his back against the 5-colored wall of light. His eyes were tightly shut and his body emitted a bloody light. His hands were forming seals as he activated the Black Death Heavenly Book with all his might. The cold, pitch-black ancient book floated in front of him, shining with a soul-stirring black light. The black light was expanding at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it had expanded to 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles. The ancient book had already been opened and the tattered pages were flipping. Streaks of dark red and purple blood light flew out from the pages of the book and merged with the black light. The dark, cold light contained an endless aura of death. Bloody dragons that contained violent killing intent swam within the Black Death Heavenly Book. Death to those who seek life, life to the dead. Finally, Heart Kenshin's power erupted to the limit, activating the full power of the Black Death Heavenly Book. His tone was cold and emotionless as he naturally roared these words. As his voice sounded, the Black Death Heavenly Book moved out like a bottomless abyss, crushing toward Ji Tianxing. Whoosh! The Black Death Heavenly Book streaked across the sky, swallowing thousands of 5-colored sword lights along the way. Wherever it passed, all divine power, laws and light were swallowed by the Black Death Heavenly Book. The mysterious Black Death Heavenly Book displayed its terrifying power. In fact, the power of the Black Death Heavenly Scripture was not limited to this. If not for the seal of the heaven-destroying sword formation, that ball of black death light with a radius of 100 miles would have swept through the heavens and earth without any hindrance. Wherever the Black Death divine light covered, mountains and rivers collapsed, all living beings withered, and even the divine power of heaven and earth was devoured. A city and millions of civilians would also be corroded into black ashes. When the Black Death divine light destroyed countless living beings, its size and power would rapidly increase, becoming even more unstoppable. Thus, the Black Death Heavenly Tome was a forbidden artifact in the primordial era. Once this thing appeared in the world, it would cause monstrous slaughter and create numerous purgatories of death. It was truly vicious and overbearing to the extreme. Even though Kenshin had used up too much of his divine power, his body was weak and his face was as pale as paper. However, when he saw that the Black Death Heavenly Scripture was still so powerful, he felt very gratified. Damn you little bastard, you're dead now. Although the Black Death Godlight will devour you until nothing is left. This monarch has no way to take your head and report to the sect master. However, if I can get rid of you and make you die in despair and fear, this monarch's mission will be completed. Kenshin thought silently, his eyes flashing with a cold, venomous light. Whoosh! In the next instant, the Black Death divine light swept across the 300 miles of sky and swallowed Ji Tianxing's figure. He also realized that he was in extreme danger, and a hint of fear flashed across his eyes. At this critical moment he didn't have time to cast a spell to save himself. He only cared about saving Jiku White Dragon and Black Dragon. He used his fastest speed to put Jiku White Dragon and Black Dragon into the Divine Pagoda. Jiku and the others were safe, but he was drowned by the Black Death Divine Light. Whoosh! In an instant his 300-meter-tall golden body was completely devoured by the Black Death Divine Light. Even his protective Divine Light couldn't resist the Black Death Divine Light at all and was directly devoured. Any defensive means were useless in front of the Black Death Divine Light. It seemed that Ji Tianxing couldn't resist and was about to be corroded into ashes by the Black Death Divine Light. Kenshin looked at this scene with a cold smile on his face. He was in an extremely good mood and felt very relieved. However, at this critical moment, a voice suddenly rang out. Ji Tianxing, who had returned to his original form, suddenly waved his hands and created a huge black vortex. Whoosh! That black vortex with a radius of 10 miles was also as black as ink, mysterious and cold. The vortex blocked in front of Ji Tianxing and released a terrifying devouring power, crazily devouring the Black Death Divine Light. Whoosh! The indestructible Black Death Divine Light couldn't show any power when it met the black vortex. It was like endless seawater crazily rushing into the vortex, unable to make any waves. In the blink of an eye, 30% of the Black Death Divine Light within 100 miles was devoured. 3 breaths later, the Black Death Divine Light was completely devoured, not leaving a single drop. Ji Tianxing's figure appeared once more, standing in the sky unscathed. He withdrew his hands with a satisfied expression and looked mockingly at Kenshin. His lips curled into a disdainful sneer. "Is that all you've got?" Divine Lord Heartsword was dumbfounded. They stared at Ji Tianxing with their mouths agape. Their hearts were filled with shock and their emotions were in turmoil. What secret art did he use? How is this possible? Heartsword God roared in his heart. He was filled with indignation and anger. The Black Death Heavenly Book was the strongest divine item in his possession. It was also his only hope of turning defeat into victory and killing Ji Tianxing. But he never would have thought that the Black Death Divine Light would be so easily neutralized without being able to hurt Ji Tianxing at all. How could this be? Such a heavy blow caused Divine Lord Heartsword to lose his mind. His face turned paler and his aura turned chaotic. At this moment, Ji Tianxing teleported over with the Heaven Barrier sword in his hand and swung his sword. God Punisher. The dazzling 5-colored sword slashed toward Kenshin's head with the power of 40 kinds of laws. The peerlessly terrifying sword intent suppressed his mind, causing him to be terrified to the extreme. He was already weak. It was too late for him to use the Black Death Heavenly Book and release the Black Death Divine Light to block. At this moment of life and death, he instinctively used his divine sense to control the Black Death Heavenly Book to block above his head. Swish! The 2 palm-sized Black Death Heavenly Books instantly expanded to a radius of 30 meters. It was like a black light barrier that protected Heartsword Divine Lord. Boom! There was a thunderous explosion. The God Punisher sword slashed the Black Death Heavenly Book. Overflowing divine light burst out, mixed with black fragments that filled the sky. The Black Death Heavenly Book disappeared. It was torn to shreds by the giant sword, turning into thousands of pieces of black paper that burned in the 7-colored divine light and turned to ashes. Even though the Black Death Heavenly Book blocked the God Punisher sword, Kenshin wasn't injured. But when he saw the Black Death Heavenly Book being destroyed with his own eyes, his eyes widened. Endless grief and indignation surged in his heart, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. A bloody mist filled the sky. It was a ghastly sight. Chapter 2905. My Black Death Heavenly Book is gone just like that. Heart Kenshin's eyes were lifeless as he muttered in a daze. That was a top-grade monarch divine artifact that had been passed down since ancient times. It was also one of the top treasures of the Bloodsword sect. The sect master had just given it to him not long ago, and he had yet to completely refine it. He had yet to discover its full power. This was the first time he had used it. Not only had it not been effective, but it had also been destroyed by Ji Tianxing's sword. How could there be such a grievance? Where could he reason with? Heart Kenshin was devastated and his heart was filled with sorrow and despair. At this moment he suddenly felt some regret. If he had known that this Tianxing was so monstrous, he would not have taken the initiative to ask the sect master for help. This child's strength and methods were definitely not something a mid-level divine lord could match. Perhaps only the sect master himself could defeat him. While Heart Kenshin was in a daze, Ji Tianqing once again swung his sword. Burial of Heaven. Another full-power sword slash. The 3,000-meter-long 5-colored sword contained 46 types of law energy. It slashed toward Heart Kenshin's head. This time without the Black Death Heavenly Book to block, Heart Kenshin was in despair. He could only ignite his god blood and unleash the last of his potential to release 18 blood-red swords. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 18 swords instantly formed a sword net that protected him. Boom. The heaven-burying sword carried supreme divine might as it slashed into the net of swords. A thunderous boom erupted and shook the universe. Amidst the loud noise, the blood-red sword net was torn to shreds, and dark red fragments scattered in all directions. Heart Kenshin was sent flying and a 2-foot-long gully appeared on his chest. Blood gushed out. Just a little bit more and he would have been split into 2 halves by this sword. After flying for 100 miles in the sky, he finally fell into the sword formation. After suffering such a heavy injury, he twitched in pain, blood spurting out of his nose and mouth. Before he could regain his composure, Ji Tianqing teleported over and slashed down with his sword. Rising sword. It was as if the sword had come from beyond the heavens, carrying with it a peerlessly elegant sword will, and it easily shattered Lord Kenshin's heart. The sword light was like a thunderbolt breaking through the sky, flashing and disappearing in a flash. Heart Kenshin-kun's body also disintegrated, blood and flesh splattering everywhere. A diamond-shaped godhead covered in cracks flew out from the bloody mist. Ji Tianqing waited patiently for the rabbit. With a wave of his hand he caught the rabbit. He clasped his palms together and unleashed an incomparably terrifying power, crushing the godhead into pieces. Kacha-kacha, with a crisp shattering sound, Heart Kenshin-kun died. The battle was over. Ji Tianqing put away the quintessence fragment and began to clean up the battlefield. Everything within a radius of 500 miles was covered by the sword formation. 100 black-clothed experts, the giant ape Kazuko Kenshin-kun, had all died in this area. The 5-colored divine light in the sky gradually dissipated, and the ground below had already turned into ruins. The skeletons and godhead fragments of the giant ape and the 100 experts were scattered among the ruins. Although the ruins were messy and the small godhead fragments were mostly buried by the ruins, they were very difficult to find. However, those godhead fragments all contained abundant divine power and the power of laws. Falling into the ruins, they were very conspicuous like fireflies in the dark night. Ji Tianqing spread out his divine sense, covering 500 miles of the ruins, and quickly found those godhead fragments. 100 breaths later he found over 1,000 godhead fragments and put them all into his space ring. Although he had already reached the Divine Lord realm, devouring those godhead fragments wouldn't increase his strength by much. However, what he needed the most was the various laws contained within those godhead fragments. After doing all this, Ji Tianqing was about to cast a spell to remove the heaven-destroying sword formation. However, his consciousness suddenly detected a powerful divine power approaching from the north at an extremely fast speed. He raised an eyebrow and released his divine sense to investigate the situation in the north. Then he saw a divine ship speeding towards him in the sky 5,000 miles to the north. The pitch-black divine ship didn't have any insignia or markings. However, Ji Tianqing immediately recognized it. It was the divine ship from before, the experts under the command of Princess Tianfeng. Ah, these fellows aren't stupid. Even though the blood sword sect has shaken them off, they still stubbornly chased after me. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a sneer, a playful expression on his face. Since you insist on sending yourselves to death, I'll fulfill your wish. An idea appeared in his mind, and the playful expression on his face became even more pronounced. Thus, he didn't remove the heaven-destroying sword formation. Instead, he urged the sword formation to operate faster. Within the sword formation, tens of thousands of giant swords were condensed, releasing resplendent divine light as they crisscrossed and intertwined. The sword formation, which had just calmed down, was once again filled with intense sword light. Ji Tianqing took off his hair bun and messed up his hair. He passed through the 5-colored light wall of the sword formation and hurriedly flew into the sky, looking like he was fleeing. At the same time, The black divine ship was only 300 miles away from the heaven-destroying sword formation. Within the divine ship's cockpit, two black-armored divine sovereigns wearing black iron masks were looking at the sword formation with shining eyes. 20,000 miles away, I can sense the surging divine power here. There are experts fighting a great battle here. As I expected, this is the place. I finally found them. Qiuliuxing, you guessed right. The blood sword sex people have chased after them and intercepted the city Lord of Tranquility. The two sides are currently engaged in an intense battle. Look, they've even used the sword formation. You can imagine how intense the battle is. Haha, I'm certain that the city Lord of Tranquility's identity has already been exposed by the blood sword sect. We've come at the right time. They're in the midst of a fierce battle. We have a chance to pick up some scraps. Despot and Qiuliuxing discussed in low voices, their voices filled with complacency and anticipation. At that moment, the two of them suddenly saw a flash of light from the sword formation in front of them. Then a human youth in a white robe and covered in blood escaped from the sword formation. Perhaps because he was terrified, he flew over in a panic as if he was fleeing for his life. This human youth's hair was disheveled and his face was covered in blood. He seemed to be in a sorry state with his injuries. However, Despot and Qiuliuxing instantly recognized him. He was the city Lord of Tranquility. Their eyes immediately lit up, and they looked at each other with complacent sneers. Ah, Qiuliuxing, your foresight is truly divine. That brat was surrounded by the blood sword sect and was already an arrow at the end of its flight. He barely managed to escape the sword formation. Now we can finally pick up some scraps. Yes. No matter how crafty the blood sword sect is, how could they hide from my divine foresight? As for that brat, he can only blame himself for being too unlucky to have delivered himself to our doorstep. As they spoke, the two of them no longer dared to waste any more time and flew out of the divine ship. Swish, swish. In the next instant, the two of them appeared high in the sky, holding a saber and a sword. They had sinister smiles on their faces as they faced Xianxia. Little bastard, this is called not taking the path to heaven but barging into hell instead. At this point you still have the extravagant hope of escaping. Obediently kneel down and accept your death. Chapter 2906. Despot's and Qiuliuxing's voices exploded in the sky. Xianxia, who was running for his life, only looked back at the sword array, as if he was afraid that someone would chase after him. He didn't even look at the sky in front of him, as if he didn't notice the arrival of the divine warship. He was shocked when he suddenly heard the voices of the two divine emperors. He quickly turned his head to the north. He was obviously stunned when he saw the two divine emperors in black armor and the divine warship. His face was covered by his long hair and his expression couldn't be seen. But Despot and Qiuliuxing could imagine that his expression must be very interesting. That guy must be scared out of his wits. He just escaped from the tiger's den and now he's in the wolf's den. He must be desperate. Similar thoughts flashed through their minds at the same time. Xianxia seemed to come back to his senses and quickly turned around and flew to the west. Little B****, where are you going? You'll definitely die today. Don't make any more pointless struggles. Despot and Qiuliuxing shouted proudly. They waved their swords and started to chase after him. The black godly warship also charged towards Xianxia like a bolt of lightning at its fastest speed. At that moment, Despot and Qiuliuxing were full of excitement and anticipation. They could even imagine the scene of Xianxia's body being dismembered. Not only the two divine emperors, but also the 100 black-armored experts in the divine warship felt that victory was in their hands. Everyone thought that as long as they caught up with Xianxia, they could easily capture and kill him. There wouldn't be any difficulty and there wouldn't be any accidents. However, no one expected that disaster would befall the next moment. Despot, Qiuliuxing and the divine warship quickly caught up with Xianxia, who was seriously injured and on the verge of death. When they were 10 miles away, Xianxia suddenly turned around and raised his palms, shooting out endless black light. Swoosh, swoosh. The two pitch-black ice-cold black lights of death instantly spread out to a radius of 100 miles, enveloping the entire area. Despot, Qiuliuxing and the entire divine warship were drowned by the black lights of death. Even now, everyone was still smiling coldly and full of confidence. In their eyes, this was just Xianxia's final struggle and it didn't have much power. However, The black armor worn by Despot and Qi Liuxing was instantly corroded by the black light of death and turned into ashes. The black divine worship had also been corroded to the point where it was riddled with holes. Only then did everyone realize that something was wrong, and they all let out roars of fear and unease. Careful. There's something strange about this black light. Retreat. However, everyone was drowned by the black light of death. Within a radius of 100 miles, it was a world of black light. Even if they wanted to retreat, how could they possibly retreat? Chi. Along with a series of soft noises, Despot and Qi Liuxing's bodies were corroded with countless holes. Even their limbs were gone. The black divine worship completely collapsed and black ash filled the sky. The hundreds of black-armored experts in the divine worship only struggled for 2 breaths of time before they were reduced to ashes. Everyone's bodies were destroyed. Only the 5-colored divine sparks were left, and they fell into the black light. Even though the divine sparks were stronger than the body. But they only had the strength of a celestial god. How could they resist the power of the Black Death divine light? That's right. That black light that blotted out the sky was the Black Death divine light released by the Black Death Sutra. Previously, Ji Tianxing used the power of the Heaven Mending Pearl to cast the devouring divine ability and devoured the Black Death divine light within a radius of 100 miles. That power was too strong and also too vicious and overbearing. Ji Tianxing didn't have time to refine it at that time, so he stored it in the Heaven Mending Pearl. He originally planned to find time to refine it after the battle ended. But he didn't expect that Despot, Qi Liuxing and the others would catch up right after the battle ended. Therefore he came up with a plan to use the Black Death divine light to deal with everyone. Along with the cracking sounds that kept ringing out, everyone's divine sparks also cracked one after another, quickly decaying into dust. In a short span of 3 breaths, the 100 black-armored experts were all dead. Not even divine sparks were left behind. Only Despot and Qi Liuxing were still alive, but they were also seriously injured and extremely weak. Their divine bodies were still being eroded and weathered. After their limbs disappeared, their torsos and heads also turned into black ash and quickly disappeared. Finally, 10 breaths of time passed. The Black Death divine light that blotted out the sky finally exhausted its power and gradually dissipated. The heaven and earth within a radius of a few hundred miles had become a barren land, like a dark and gray desert. Despot and Qi Liuxing's bodies were completely destroyed, leaving only their divine sparks that were full of cracks. After suffering such serious injuries, their strength had decreased greatly, and they were already arrows at the end of their flight. At this time Ji Tianxing's voice came from not far away. I didn't expect the 2 of you to be so tenacious. You actually didn't die in the Black Death divine light? Obviously Ji Tianxing didn't expect Despot and Qi Liuxing to still be alive. Despot and Qi Liuxing heard the voice and looked back at the same time. They saw Ji Tianxing, whose white robe was stained with blood and whose hair was disheveled, standing calmly in the sky. At close range, Despot and Qi Liuxing discovered that he wasn't injured at all, and his aura was still unfathomable. There was a faint sneer on his handsome face, and his eyes were still as deep and vast as before. He didn't look injured at all. Despot and Qi Liuxing immediately reacted and roared in their hearts. We've been tricked. He's tricking us. He's not injured at all. Despot and Qi Liuxing couldn't believe and accept this result. They didn't have time to think about it. Ji Tianxing had fought with the people of the Blood Sword sect. How could he be unharmed? They only had one thought at this time. Run. Whoosh. Whoosh. 2 5-colored divine sparks streaked across the sky, flying to the east and west respectively. They were very smart. If they ran separately, at least one of them would survive. Unfortunately, they still underestimated Ji Tianxing's strength. Still, Ji Tianxing didn't move from his spot. He only raised his palms and shouted coldly. Instantly, the space within 100 miles froze. The 2 divine sparks froze in the sky as if they were frozen. They couldn't escape nor could they move. After reaching the Divine Lord realm, Ji Tianxing's control of the law of space had reached an even more exquisite level. Whoosh! Ji Tianxing shot out 2 golden lights that wrapped around the 2 divine sparks and pulled them back to him. He grabbed one of the divine sparks with each hand and captured Despot and Qi Liuxing. You 2 must be very curious about who I am. Ji Tianxing looked at the 2 divine sparks and said with a smile, To tell you the truth, this lord is Tianxing, a consecrator of the Qi family. Hearing this, the two divine sparks trembled. Clearly they were very emotional. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Are you still confused? Aren't the people of the Blood Sword sect blocking this monarch's path and fighting with this monarch? Why didn't the people of the Blood Sword sect appear and rush out of the sword formation to kill me?" As he spoke, he removed the heaven-vanquishing sword formation. There was nothing in the sky within a radius of 500 miles. Just before you arrived, this lord killed them all. The two divine sparks trembled again in extreme fear. Chapter 2907. The answer was already revealed. But Despot and Qi Liuxing were shocked until they were speechless, as if they were petrified. Even though they had long been mentally prepared and guessed that City Lord Shangning was Tianqing. They also knew that it was Tianqing who killed Yuan Qingkong and the two reverends. This Reverend Tianqing's strength and methods were very powerful and could not be underestimated. But Despot and Qi Liuxing were even clearer on how powerful Bloodsword sect's left protector and giant ape divine lord were. These two powerhouses joining hands was enough to match a 7th-stage realm high-ranking divine lord. In their view, if Ji Tianqing could escape Bloodsword sect's encirclement, it would be very impressive. But the final result was simply too horrifying. Bloodsword sect's 100 experts, including the left protector and giant ape, were all killed off by Ji Tianqing. Furthermore, it was even in a short 15 minutes. This was simply too preposterous. Despot and Qi Liuxing's 3 views and understanding were overturned. The two of them were immersed in incomparable shock and were unable to recover for a long time. At this time, Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "You guys must have thought that this lord concealed his strength previously. This lord is actually a high-ranking divine lord." Despot and Qi Liuxing did not follow up, tacitly agreeing with this view. That was the only reason that made sense. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianqing said with a ruminating smile, "But unfortunately you guys guessed wrong again. This lord just broke through to the Divine Lord realm not long ago and is now a first-level Divine Lord realm." Despot and Qi Liuxing were stunned once again. The two divine sparks did not move at all, as if they had lost the ability to think and move. One shocking secret after another popped out of Ji Tianqing's mouth, directly shocking the two of them silly. Their consciousness fell into a blank, crashing. At this time Ji Tianqing sighed again and said, "Sigh. You guys know too many secrets. You must die." Despot and Qi Liuxing finally recovered the ability to think, but they were speechless. "Damn it. We were puzzled and secretly guessed these questions. But we didn't ask you. These secrets, it was you who wanted to reveal them, alright? You actually despise us for knowing too much and want to kill us to silence us? Can you be any more shameless?" Despot and Qi Liuxing's consciousness were filled with such thoughts. They were filled with grief and indignation. However, this was no longer important. Ji Tianqing clenched his fists and pressed them down twice as if they were light. Crack, crack. Despot and Qi Liuxing's godheads were instantly crushed. 2 middle-level divine lords were crushed to death by Ji Tianqing just like this. Before he died, Qi Liuxing only had one thought in his mind. Faster thief. If I had known that this brat was so heaven-defying, I wouldn't have tried to be smart and sent myself to a dead end. However, in Despot's consciousness, there was a different thought, and it was filled with resentment. Qi Liuxing, this idiot, thought that he was extremely smart, but in the end he got us all killed. If I had known earlier, I would have been even more stupid. If I hadn't followed the Blood Sword sect here, nothing would have happened. Unfortunately, these two fellow sufferers no longer had the chance to communicate. If there was a netherworld in this world, the two of them would probably have a big fight on their way to the Yellow Springs. A moment later, Ji Tianqing left the ruins and continued on his way. He then summoned the Black Dragon as his mount and had the White Dragon accompany him to protect him. Black Dragon flew across the sky at lightning speed, heading straight for the south. White Dragon stood on the dragon's back, using divine sense to investigate the surrounding situation, maintaining vigilance at all times. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in meditation, holding over 10 godhead fragments in his hands, silently refining them. Relying on the Devour divine ability, he quickly refined the god power within the fragments, stripping away the divine Tao laws within. As time passed, his strength continued to accumulate and increase. The number of divine Tao laws he grasped was also rapidly increasing. One day later, his strength reached the critical point and was about to break through to the 2nd stage realm. The number of divine Tao laws he grasped had also reached 84. At this time, Black Dragon had already left Green Mountain City and entered the borders of Wind Night City. Continuing to fly south, he still had to pass through 4 cities before he could enter Heavenly Wind City. As for Heavenly Snow City, it was even further south. With Black Dragon's flying speed, it would take at least 10 days to reach. Late at night. The night sky was cold. Cold winds howled high up in the sky. A waning moon hung in the sky. The stars that filled the sky were faintly discernible under the cover of the clouds. At this time, Ji Tianxing finally broke through the bottleneck after 12 attempts and hard work. Swoosh. Following, his entire body radiating with resplendent golden light, a sacred and dignified aura burst forth. He finally broke through to the second-level Divine Lord realm. Vigorous and vast divine power surged and rose within his body, stirring up the sound of rolling thunder. His outer appearance did not change, but his strength increased around 6 times, his foundation even deeper. Huff! Ji Tianxing revolved and regulated his breathing for an hour before ending cultivation, letting out a long breath of turbid air. At this time, White Dragon, who was quietly waiting by the side, hurriedly bowed and said with a look of joy, "Congratulations to Master for breaking through again, successfully recovering to the second-level Divine Lord realm." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a gentle expression, "Currently I'm still a low-rank Divine Lord. Breaking through realms is relatively simple and still very smooth. When I become a high-rank Divine Lord in the future, it will be very difficult to break through again." But White Dragon did not believe it and said expectantly, "Master's current talent and strength foundation are more than 10 times better than back then. Not to mention recovering to a high-rank Divine Lord, even recovering to the Divine King realm is still easy and simple. In this disciple's view, at most in another dozen years, you will be able to return to the Divine King realm and explore the entire boundless heaven continent." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and did not continue this topic. "In this day, did you discover anything unusual?" White Dragon's mouth curled into a smile and said in a playful tone, "In the previous battle, Master killed everyone. At that time, the commotion of the battle was too great and we were secretly monitored. Therefore the news will spread very quickly. Blood Sword Sect and Princess Tianfeng's people should have received the news long ago. In this day, when we passed by the vicinity of Windy Night City, several groups of people secretly followed and investigated. Apart from them, no one dared to approach, let alone attack us." Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood and analyzed calmly. In the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom, high-ranked Divine Lords are the top experts. Only the masters of the 6 major sects, the Monarch, the 2 Dukes and the royal family's consecrators have such strength. Those top experts are proud of their status and will not act rashly. Therefore, the strongest people that Blood Sword Sect and Princess Tianfeng can mobilize are only 6th rank and 5th rank Divine Lords. I killed all of them yesterday, so Blood Sword Sect and Princess Tianfeng must be shocked. They realize that my strength is far beyond their expectations and will not act rashly. Otherwise, they will send a few more Divine Lords to their deaths. I think that they should be discussing countermeasures, mobilizing people and scheming something. The next time they act, it will be a thunderous blow and they will use all their strength." Chapter 2908. Ji Tianxing had already expected the actions of the Blood Sword Sect and Princess Tianfeng. It wasn't hard to figure out what they were thinking from their point of view. Even though he knew that an even more dangerous situation was coming, he was fearless. However, he was fearless and he was confident that he could turn the situation around. Black Dragon continued on his way while he continued to refine the Godhead fragments to increase his strength and condense more laws. Late at night, Tianfeng Province City, which had a radius of 150 kilometers, was sleeping peacefully under the night sky. This ancient city with 10,000 years of history was located in the Tianbei wasteland. The surrounding tens of thousands of kilometers was a wasteland without any mountains or forests. Thus, the northern wind from the setting sun ocean swept across the wasteland, causing sand and stones to fly. Even though this city looked somewhat desolate, in reality the area around Tianfeng Province City was rich in metal ores. In addition, this main city was located in the middle of a dozen cities, so its geographical position was very important. Thus, when the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom was established 10,000 years ago, this city was designated as a county city to manage the 16 surrounding cities. Many experts, powerful factions and merchant associations were stationed in Tianfeng Province City and spread to the surrounding cities. The city was very prosperous, with tall buildings and rows upon rows of houses. More than 4 million people lived in this county city. Located in the northern city district, the luxurious Princess Manor was still brightly lit. The guards and attendants in the manor were as relaxed and carefree as usual. From the inside to the outside, they exuded the noble and calm bearing of a 1,000-year-old clan. After all, the owner of this manor was one of the 36 princesses of the Divine Kingdom, the noble Count Xian. Not to mention Tianfeng Province City, even in the surrounding cities, no one dared to be disrespectful to him. Even though many people had heard a rumor. A traitor had appeared in Qingshan City, a small coastal city in the north, and had dared to kill the Qingshan City Lord. The Qingshan City Lord had a close relationship with Count Xian. Count Xian was furious and swore to kill the traitor to avenge the Qingshan City Lord. But in the eyes of others, such a small matter wasn't worth worrying about. As long as Count Xian gave the order, the traitor would die without a doubt. In the surrounding 50 million kilometers, no one dared to go against Count Xian. At this moment in the princess's study, four guards were guarding the door and the door to the study was tightly shut. The room was dimly lit and quiet. A white-haired old man in a purple robe and a black cloak was leaning against a large wooden armchair. The old man was tall and sturdy and his spirit was hale and hearty. His dignified square face was filled with the vicissitudes of life. His sunken eyes flickered with a cold light, deep and sharp. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the dark night outside the window. He was waiting and thinking. His right hand rested on the armrest of the chair, and his knuckles tapped lightly on the armrest, making a rhythmic sound. This white-haired elder was the leader of the Tianfeng Prefecture, the Tianfeng Prefecture Princess, Count Xian. Even though Earl Qixian's expression was calm and his eyes were cold. However, the small subconscious movements of his right hand betrayed his inner state. Worry and anxiety. 20 hours ago. The 3 groups of spies under his command all returned with news one after another. He Ba, Qi Liuxing and the hundreds of elite experts had all died in Wind Night City. Apart from that, the experts of Blood Sword Sect had also been killed. When he first received this news, Count Xian was dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. He couldn't imagine that a small Qi family consecrator would have such terrifying means. Perhaps only a high divine lord would have such power? But why would a high divine lord with a noble status lower himself to be a consecrator of Azure Mountain City's Qi family? Count Xian couldn't understand. However, the 3 groups of spies reported the same result and he had to accept this fact. Thus he calmly thought for a long time. He Ba and Qi Liuxing had both failed, so who else could kill that kid? He had more than 10 low divine lords under his command, and more than 800 elite experts. However, sending low divine lords to kill Tianxing was useless. Ordinary heavenly god experts were useless no matter how many of them there were. He could only send mid-divine lords to carry out the mission. However, He Ba and Qi Liuxing were dead, and he could only mobilize 3 mid-divine lords. Including himself, that was only 4 people. Even so, he still felt that it wasn't safe and that he had no chance of success. After all, Tianxing had not only killed He Ba and Qi Liuxing, but also the experts of Blood Sword Sect. According to the reports of his spies, the leader of Blood Sword Sect this time was the noble Left Protector. This made Count Xian suspect that even if he personally led 3 mid-divine lords to kill Tianxing, he might not be able to return. Could it be that he could only admit defeat and give up on taking revenge on Tianxing? This thought had once appeared in Count Xian's mind. However, he quickly rejected this idea. Because he couldn't afford to lose and he couldn't afford to lose face. A dignified county lord actually couldn't do anything to a nobody. 2 of his generals had been killed, but he could only swallow his anger and not dare to take revenge. Once this news spread, his dignity as a county lord would be trampled underfoot. Moreover, He Ba and Qi Liuxing were only his vanguards. Even if these 2 generals died, he could still mobilize stronger forces. For example, the 5 aristocratic families in Tianfeng province all had Sir God realm experts. At this critical moment, as long as Count Xian asked, the 5 aristocratic families would be willing to help. In any case, everyone had a tacit understanding. After the matter was settled, Count Xian would make some concessions and give the 5 aristocratic families some benefits. For example, the Qing family had always wanted the South Wind Canyon, and the Du family had always been thinking about the Cloud Cup Pool. The Shang family had sent many gifts, hoping to reduce the annual tax of 80 million. As for the Nangong family, they wanted to occupy a street in South City and transform it into a smithing workshop. Thinking of this, Count Qishan was full of energy and fighting spirit. A nameless nobody with no background wants to fight with this seat? Do you think that this kind of battle depends on strength? It's a battle of status and power. The entire Tianfeng city belongs to me, so don't even think about leaving my territory alive. Count Qishan muttered to himself, his body emitting a domineering aura as a sinister light flashed in his eyes. Swoosh. He finally made up his mind and said in a dignified tone, Huan Yu, go and inform the family heads of the 5 aristocratic families to come to the county lord's residence immediately. I have something to discuss with them. Originally there was no one else in the study room other than him. However, as he finished speaking, a hoarse and deep voice sounded from the corner of the study room. County Lord, have you made up your mind? Huan Yu, who was hiding in the dark, was Count Qishan's trusted aide. He knew very well that Count Qishan and the 5 aristocratic families had always been in a competition. Since Count Qishan had asked the 5 aristocratic families for help, he had to make some sacrifices and concessions. Chapter 2909. Princess, you have been competing with the 5 aristocratic families for so many years. It took you more than 200 years to suppress the 5 aristocratic families and maintain the balance. Once you speak up tonight, the 5 aristocratic families will be even more powerful in the future. By then it will be very difficult for you to suppress them and maintain the balance. Huan Yu was Count Qishan's right-hand man and also one of his brains. He did not want to see Count Qishan bow to the 5 aristocratic families in order to deal with Tianxing and destroy the balance in the county. Why don't you do it yourself? We will gather 4 middle-level godly lords, 8 low-level godly lords, and 500 elite experts. With such a powerful force, we will definitely be able to kill Tianxing and tear him into pieces. Huan Yu tried to persuade Count Qishan with a firm and confident tone. However, Count Qishan shook his head and said, We have already failed once. That kid will definitely be on his guard and will not fall for it again. This time we have to gather the strongest forces to kill that kid in one fell swoop. Only then can we avoid future troubles. Of course I will do it myself. However, quality does not matter. I have to borrow the strength of the 5 aristocratic families. As for the godly lords under me, they have to preserve their strength. Otherwise, how can we keep the 5 aristocratic families in check in the future? It was obvious that Count Qishan had already considered the consequences. In fact, he even predicted that there would be heavy casualties in this assassination attempt. He would rather use this opportunity to exhaust the 5 aristocratic families' strength than let his godly lords die in battle. Huan Yu guessed his thoughts and did not try to persuade him anymore. He only said worriedly, Princess, if you use this opportunity to weaken the 5 aristocratic families' strength, they will definitely be on guard. If they react passively and push the blame to each other, won't it affect the overall situation? Count Qishan said coldly, If I don't go personally, those cunning bastards will definitely have their own plans. Therefore I will personally lead the team. You will stay in the princess residence. Huan Yu was silent for a while before he said, The princess residence is very safe. Nothing will happen. I will go with you. It will be safer. Count Qishan did not comment and did not reject him. Then Huan Yu disappeared into the darkness and drifted away. Count Qishan also got up and walked out of the study. He entered a secret underground room and waited for the 5 aristocratic families' family heads to arrive. Time passed quickly. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The Black Dragon traveled continuously for 3 days and 3 nights before finally entering the North Heaven wasteland. After flying for another 50,000 miles, they would pass by the Tianfeng County. At this moment, night had already fallen. The Black Dragon gradually slowed down its flying speed and cautiously surveyed its surroundings. Tianxing also ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. Through these 3 days of cultivation, his divine Dao foundation was already stable. He refined many more law fragments and condensed more than a dozen laws. Presently, the divine Dao laws he'd grasped had reached 100. Teacher, we have arrived at the northern wasteland. Tianfeng City is just 50,000 miles away. Do we need to make a detour? At this time, the White Dragon bowed to Tianxing and reported the current position to him. Tianxing nodded slightly and said calmly, Why should I avoid it? If Princess Tianfeng wanted to kill me, No matter how hard I tried to avoid her, she would still come after me. If he had been intimidated, he had already given up on the idea of revenge. Even if I flew over the Tianfeng County, she wouldn't dare to attack me. The white dragon nodded and said, I understand. Teacher, you don't want to waste time. You just want to cut the Gordian knot and end this quickly. Ji Tianxing nodded and didn't say anything. The white dragon reported again. Originally, I also thought that after you killed those black-armored experts and destroyed the divine worship, Princess Tianfeng would retreat. Unfortunately, not only did she not give up on the idea of revenge, she even sent out 3 times the number of spies and scouts. In these 3 days, there were at least 30 groups of spies secretly spying on us. There were even a few groups of spies who didn't know what was good for them and followed us all the way. Since I had nothing to do, I took the time to kill 2 groups of spies. The rest of the spies saw that the situation was not good and retreated further away. Ji Tianxing frowned and sneered. That's the princess of a county, the earl of a divine kingdom. One of the 36 feudal officials of the blood flame divine kingdom with great power. I only killed 2 Sir Gods under his command and killed over 100 experts, that's all. If she is so scared that she doesn't dare to take revenge, how can she continue to be a princess? The white dragon also sneered and nodded. Teacher, you are right. Ji Tianxing stood up and looked ahead at the seemingly calm wilderness under the night sky. If I am not wrong, Princess Tianfeng has already used her strongest force to set up an ambush in the wilderness not far from here. These 3 days are enough for them to set up a few monarch-level divine arrays and mobilize thousands of experts. The white dragon raised his eyebrows and asked, Teacher, since you are so confident, are we going to crush them directly? Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said with a smile, Confidence doesn't mean arrogance. We still don't know how many people they have. If he barged in recklessly, wouldn't he be asking for trouble? Even if we win in the end, the process will be more difficult. The white dragon asked with interest, Then what do you mean? Ji Tianxing revealed a wisp of a meaningful smile and said, When I refined those quintessence fragments earlier, I obtained a type of mirror image law. This law is very special. It can imitate any target 100% and there are almost no flaws. Although it is only a god-level law, it is not very powerful. But if we use it well, we will be able to achieve unexpected results. The white dragon suddenly understood and said with anticipation, I understand. Teacher, are you going to show them a scene of killing each other as an appetizer for the big battle? Ji Tianxing smiled and said, Okay, you and the black dragon go into the divine pagoda and rest. After that, he put the white dragon and the black dragon into the divine pagoda. He was alone, hiding in the darkness and flying forward silently. At the same time, 20,000 miles behind him, a few experts who were secretly following him suddenly lost track of the black dragon's aura. The experts were stunned for a moment and quickly used their divine skills to search for the black dragon, the white dragon and Ji Tianxing. However, they could not find any trace of them at all. Ji Tianxing, the white dragon and the black dragon seemed to have disappeared into thin air. How could 2 living people and a black dragon suddenly disappear? The experts were shocked and quickly took out their communication jade slips to report the news to Princess Tianfeng. At this moment, Princess Tianfeng and Huan Yu were lying in ambush in the wilderness, patiently waiting for Ji Tianxing to walk into their trap. Chapter 29:10. 20,000 miles away from Tianfeng Province City. The wasteland, which was filled with rocks and weeds, looked the same as usual. However, in reality, there were 4 monarch-grade divine arrays set up here. They overlapped and covered a radius of 1,000 miles. The 4 arrays were all high-grade monarch-grade divine arrays and they were extremely powerful. There were arrays that could conceal one's aura. There was also an array that could confuse and trap people. There was also an array that could seal people and a powerful Berserk Thunder Thousand Swords array. At this moment, the 4 arrays were hidden and they did not reveal any divine power aura. Tianfeng Province Princess and Huan Yu were hiding in the dark night sky. They were hiding in the clouds that were 10,000 feet above the ground. The 2 of them looked at the northern night sky quietly and waited for the arrival of the Black Dragon and Ji Tianxing. As for the people from the 5 aristocratic families, they were hiding around the array. 3 days ago in the early morning, the 5 aristocratic families and Tianfeng Province Princess had discussed for more than 2 hours in a secret chamber. No one knew the contents and process of the 6 experts' secret conversation. However, in the end, the 5 aristocratic families agreed to help Tianfeng province princess set up an ambush outside the city to kill Ji Tianxing. Each aristocratic family would send 1 middle god and 100 heaven god experts to cooperate with Tianfeng province princess and listen to her orders. As for the Commandery Princess Tianfeng personally led 200 elite fighters and Huan Yu followed her into battle. The manpower of the 6 great factions added together was 7 middle-level divine lords and 700 elite experts. With so many middle god experts and heaven god experts, they were extremely powerful. Even if a true high divine lord came, they would also be defeated and fall on the spot. He would not even have the chance to escape. Tianfeng province princess was satisfied with this arrangement and she was confident that she could kill Ji Tianxing. The 5 aristocratic families were also confident that they would win. At this moment, the middle god experts from the 5 aristocratic families each led 100 elites and were hiding around the array. The 200 elites from Tianfeng province princess were also hiding near the array. They were divided into 6 different directions and they were waiting for Ji Tianxing to come and die. However, at this moment, suddenly, a beam of spiritual light flew towards Princess Tianfeng from the clouds in the sky. Although the beam of spiritual light disappeared in a flash, Tianfeng province princess reacted quickly and immediately grabbed the communication jade slip. But this scene still could not escape the probing of a divine lord powerhouse. Apparently, Princess Tianfeng's hiding place had been exposed. He held the communication jade slip in his hand. His face was dark and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Damned idiot! Who is it that is sending me a message at this time? If Tianxing is already nearby, wouldn't I be exposed? As early as an hour ago he had received news from his spies that Ji Tianxing was about to enter the wilderness. From then on he ordered several groups of spies not to send any messages within 2 hours. But now someone had actually disobeyed his orders and sent him a message. Infanta Tianfeng swore to herself that if the person who sent the message was not in a hurry, she would definitely kill him. When Huan Yu, who was hiding in the darkness, saw that she was about to go berserk, he immediately sent a telepathic message to persuade her. "Princess, please calm down. That brat shouldn't be here yet. He might need some time. Furthermore, the scouts do not dare to disobey your orders." Something important must have happened and they had no choice but to send a message. Tianfeng province princess suppressed her anger and nodded silently. Then she read the message in the jade slip with her divine sense. The target entered the wilderness. After flying for thousands of miles, they suddenly disappeared. When Tianfeng province princess received the message, her body shook and her face stiffened. After a while she came to herself and was shocked and furious. How could this be? There were spies watching them all the way. They entered the wilderness and were about to fall into the trap. How could they suddenly disappear? These damned idiots. How could they not keep an eye on such a big black dragon? Tianfeng province princess was very annoyed. She could not wait to kill all the spies to vent her anger. When she thought of Ji Tianxing, who was tens of thousands of miles away, suddenly disappearing without a trace, she became anxious. A bad premonition arose in his heart. At the same time, Ji Tianxing remained invisible as he traveled through the depths of the underground. Of course, he had seen the spiritual light that flashed in the night sky just now. He guessed that the spies must have panicked when he and the black dragon suddenly disappeared. That was why they sent a message to Tianfeng province princess. In other words, the dark cloud in the night sky was where Tianfeng province princess was hiding. Ji Tianxing did not go to find Tianfeng province princess. Tianfeng province princess was worried that her position would be exposed, so she must be very vigilant. At the same time, Ji Tianxing's divine sense detected that there were several large arrays in the wilderness, which covered a radius of thousands of miles. Outside the array there were 6 groups of experts hiding in the depths of the earth. Therefore he chose the group in the southeast and approached them quietly. They were from the Dou family, which was an elixir business. The 100 elite experts were all dressed in black and wore masks on their faces. The leader of the group was a divine master of the Dou family, a 5th heaven realm expert. The shelter of these people was the rock layer deep in the ground. The 100 experts were scattered in the rock layer, holding their breaths and not daring to move. Ji Tianxing sneaked into the rock layer like a ghost. When he saw the masked experts sticking to the rock layer like stones, he sneered in his heart. "Ha! You want to ambush and assassinate people with such little ability? As this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianqing secretly used the law of poison and activated the soul-extinguishing poison. 10 wisps of black soul-extinguishing poison gushed out from his fingertips and spread rapidly in the rock layer. The rock layer was pitch black and the soul-extinguishing poison was also pitch black. It was impossible to see it with the naked eye. The divine masters and the masked experts did not dare to use their divine sense and divine power in order to hide their auras. Therefore no one noticed anything unusual. They also did not know that the god of death had arrived. The pitch-black soul-extinguishing poison quickly spread across the rock layer and filled up the gaps between the rock layer. The mysterious poison ignored everyone's armor, penetrated their divine bodies and directly killed their godheads. Swoosh. Swoosh swoosh. After a short 2 breaths of time, death arrived. One after another, the masked experts had their godheads corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison, their divine souls dying on the spot. Even though their bodies and clothes were completely undamaged without the slightest wound, they were still in a daze. Their divine souls were destroyed and they lost their consciousness and thoughts. Even if their godheads were still there, they were still alive, but they had already become useless trash. They were no different from rocks and wood. In just 3 breaths of time, the 100 masked experts all lost their divine souls. The Du family's divine master's strength was stronger. Even if he was hit by the soul-extinguishing poison, he could also hold on for a moment. He crawled in the rock layer, holding his head in incomparable pain, his entire body trembling like sifting chaff. Why is this Lord's consciousness so chaotic? Godhead almost exploding. No. There must be a problem. Who ambushed this Lord? The Du family's divine master realized that something was wrong and started to struggle. However, a formless divine power suddenly attacked from behind him, blasting his godhead. Chapter 29:11. Bam. A muffled sound exploded in the Du family's consecrator's mind. His divine soul suffered a heavy blow, and his vision turned black and he fainted. Following that, an even more turbulent soul-extinguishing poison invaded his divine spark without any restraint. After 2 breaths, his divine soul was completely destroyed. The preserved divine body also lost its thoughts and consciousness, akin to a piece of wood. Only then did the invisible Ji Tianqing appear. He stared at the Du family's consecrator prostrating on the ground, a hint of a cold smile curled at the corners of his mouth. Mirror image law. With a low cry in his heart, he used the mirror image law that he had just condensed not long ago. Swoosh. A black light flashed and Ji Tianqing became the Du family's consecrator. Regardless of whether it was looks, figure or temperament, it was completely the same. Even the 2 people's hair number, skin texture, some wounds and markings on their bodies, were completely the same. It was no exaggeration at all. Even if the Du family's patriarch came, he might not be able to distinguish the real from the fake. Indeed interesting. Ji Tianqing looked at the Du family's consecrator, then looked at himself, revealing a hint of a satisfied smile. Following that, he reached out his palm and pressed on the Du family's consecrator's head, quietly unleashing a surge of divine power. Crack. The Du family's consecrator's divine spark was shattered, and he died on the spot. 10 pieces of divine spark fragments wrapped in golden light flew out of the corpse, landing in Ji Tianqing's palm. Ji Tianqing put away the divine spark fragments and quietly groped toward the east. As for those 100 masked experts, he could not be bothered with them for the time being. Anyway, these people lost their divine souls and were no different from blocks of wood. After the battle ended, it would not be too late to deal with them then. Swoosh. Ji Tianqing was like an invisible ghost, shuttling back and forth underground as fast as passing through. After a few breaths, he arrived at the east side of the Grand Array and tunneled into a cave. This last-minute cave was only 1,000 feet in radius. There were 100 celestial deity experts inside, all wearing black armor with helmets covering their faces. These were the Nangong family's people, all wearing armor forged by the Nangong family, their defense very strong. The one in the lead was a burly man wearing a golden robe. This person's figure was tall and straight like a sword, his aura very sharp. He was the Nangong aristocratic family's head elder, possessing 6th-level Divine Lord realm strength. The Nangong family was good at refining weapons and had forged all kinds of famous armors and swords. Grand Elder's cultivation method and divine ability were also focused on tempering the body. His body was forged like a divine sword with a threatening sharpness. Ji Tianxing quietly sneaked into the cave. He used the same trick again and released the surging soul-extinguishing poison. The pitch-black soul-extinguishing poison quickly spread through the cave. The armors and defensive divine artifacts of the heavenly gods were completely useless. In the blink of an eye, many experts were corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison. Their souls quickly dissipated, and before they could even let out a scream, they had become soulless walking corpses. However, there were always exceptions. First Elder Nangong, who was the strongest among them, had just been corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison when a golden bead on her chest lit up with a dazzling golden light. Great Elder Nangong's godhead was corroded by the soul-destroying poison and he groaned in pain. However, the power of the soul-extinguishing poison was reduced by half by the golden pearl in front of his chest. Therefore he was only injured and did not fall unconscious. Great Elder Nangong instantly woke up and his eyes angrily scanned the surroundings. He shouted angrily, "Who is it? Who ambushed me? Damned beast, get the hell out here." Seeing that Great Elder Nangong was still full of strength and was still shouting in the cave, Ji Tianxing was afraid that he would alert the other groups, so he could only appear in a hurry. "Quick, retreat quickly. There's a trap here." He staggered into the cave, his left hand clutching his chest, and his voice was hoarse and intermittent. Whether it was his expression, actions, or voice, he was exactly the same as the Du family's consecrator. Anyone who saw him like this would think that he was heavily injured. Great Elder Nangong was no exception. He turned his head and stared at him, furrowing his brows. "Du family's consecrator? What are you doing? Who hurt you?" Recognizing that it was the Du family's consecrator, Great Elder Nangong relaxed a lot, but he was more confused. Ji Tianxing anxiously rushed in front of him and shouted in a muffled voice, "We've all been tricked. Qishan, old thief." He purposely exposed himself. What a vicious method. As he spoke, Ji Tianxing spat out a mouthful of blood. He seemed to have used up all his strength as he staggered and fell towards Great Elder Nangong. "What?" Great Elder Nangong's eyes widened and his heart was filled with shock. Seeing that the Du family's consecrator had fainted, he subconsciously stretched out his arms to support him. At the same time he anxiously shouted, "Brother! Don't faint. Wake up quickly. What is going on? That bastard Count Qishan, what did he do?" The 5 great families and Count Qishan had always been wary of each other, afraid of each other and restrained each other. Once there was a suitable opportunity and they did not need to take responsibility, they would not hesitate to get rid of each other. Even if they were working together now, the 5 great families were still wary of Princess Tianfeng. Thus, Great Elder Nangong only wanted to ask Ji Tianxing what Count Qishan was plotting. He completely ignored the fact that the Du family's consecrator in front of him was a fake. Bang! Just as Great Elder Nangong supported Ji Tianxing, he felt a loud explosion in his mind. A formless divine soul energy fiercely hit his godhead, heavily injuring his divine soul. At the same time, the Du family's consecrator, who should have fainted, pulled off the golden pearl he was wearing. Great Elder Nangong's vision turned black, and he staggered back a few steps before falling to the ground. Only now did he realize that the Du family's consecrator was unharmed. He was not injured at all. Moreover, the Du family's consecrator was holding the golden pearl in his hand and looking at him with a cold smile. "Hee. I didn't expect you to have such a treasure on you. Can actually block my poison?" The Du family's consecrator sneered. Great Elder Nangong immediately felt a chill run down his spine. He glared at the Du family's consecrator and roared, "You damned bastard! You dare to sneak attack me? Why did you do this? Are you not afraid that the Du family will become the target of public criticism?" Until now, Great Elder Nangong still did not see any flaws. He just could not understand why the Du family's consecrator would attack him and ruin the ambush. Was this guy crazy? Was he not afraid of the Nangong family and Count Qishan's revenge? Hee. It's better to be a muddle-headed ghost. Goodbye. Ji Tianxing sneered and once again sent out divine soul energy towards Great Elder Nangong's head. Piff. Great Elder Nangong opened his mouth and spat out blood. His eyes were filled with anger as he fell straight to the ground. His divine soul was heavily injured, shattered, and corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison, dissipating in the blink of an eye. Even if his godhead and body were intact, it was useless. Xianxia strode over and struck his head with his palm, shattering his godhead. After taking out his godhead fragment, Xianxia used the mirror image law and changed his appearance. Then, using Great Elder Nangong's appearance, he quickly ran towards the group in the northeast corner. Chapter 29:12. In the northeast corner of the formation, there was also a middle-level divine monarch and 100 divine realm experts. They were the Shang family, a merchant that dealt in salt and iron. The leader was the grand elder of the Shang family, the grandfather of the current family head. People called him Old Ancestor Shang. This old man was dressed in a blue robe and had a white beard that reached his chest. His body was as thin as firewood, but his aura was as strong as a mountain. He was also a 5th-level divine monarch expert and had cultivated the withered wood true technique to the peak. At this moment he was standing in the crack in the ground, frowning as he looked in the direction of the Nangong family. His eyes flashed with a cold light. Almost 100 elite experts in gray robes and masks were lurking in the cracks below the ground, waiting for orders with their sabers and swords in hand. The guard captain approached Old Ancestor Shang and asked respectfully, "Old Ancestor, there seems to be a problem with the Nangong family. Do you want me to go down and take a look?" Old Ancestor Shang waved his hand and said in a dignified tone, "No need. The princess hasn't given the order to attack yet, so the target probably hasn't appeared yet. As for the Nangong family, if they cause any trouble, the princess will take care of them. We just need to do our part." Before he finished speaking, his divine sense detected a burly man in a golden robe flying underground. It was a divine lord powerhouse. It was none other than Great Elder Nangong. He was rushing over in a hurry. Old Ancestor Shang immediately shut his mouth and stared at Great Elder Nangong vigilantly, locking onto his aura. A familiar figure and face as well as a familiar aura of the divine soul. Old Ancestor Shang muttered in his heart, "It's really him. What is this little brat doing here in this old man's place?" In the blink of an eye, Great Elder Nangong entered the crack in the ground and arrived in front of Old Ancestor Shang. Although it was dark underground, there was no light. Old Ancestor Shang could see that Great Elder Nangong's hair was disheveled and his chest was stained with blood. Old Ancestor Shang's heart tightened as he had a bad premonition. "Little Nangong, what happened?" Old Ancestor Shang stared at him with a sharp gaze. Although he seemed to be concerned, he was secretly on guard. Great Elder Nangong was very tactful. He stopped 100 steps away from Old Ancestor Shang. He raised his blood-stained face and roared in a hoarse voice, "Old Ancestor Shang. Quickly activate the formation. That brat is already here. Just now, that brat used a secret technique to kill the experts under my command. I exchanged a few blows with him and was injured by him. I was lucky enough to escape and warn him." Great Elder Nangong sounded very anxious as blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Of course, Old Ancestor Shang didn't suspect anything. He just asked in disbelief, "What? The target is already here? Why didn't Count Xian notice? Why didn't he give the order to attack? Is that kid's strength and methods really so terrifying?" Great Elder Nangong was very anxious and did not have the patience to answer so many questions. He growled, "It's true. Otherwise, why would I be injured? Quickly inform the others to work together to activate the formation. Otherwise it will be too late." After saying that, Great Elder Nangong was about to pass through the crack to inform the other group of people. Old Ancestor Shang didn't have time to think and he quickly dissuaded Zhongyu. "You don't have to inform them personally, I can just send a voice transmission to them. If you stay here, this old man can take care of you in case that brat sneak attacks." This was exactly what Great Elder Nangong wanted. He stayed in the crack and stood beside Old Ancestor Shang. He quickly took out an elixir and consumed it to heal his injuries. Old Ancestor Shang didn't waste any time and immediately used his divine sense to inform the people of the other two families. The people of the Qing family and the Lu family were lying in ambush at the south and west of the formation. The two leading monarchs were the Qing family's consecrator and the Lu family's great elder. Old Ancestor Shang sent a voice transmission to the two of them and told them that the situation was urgent and that they had to activate the formation immediately. The Qing family's consecrator and the Lu family's great elder also noticed that something seemed to have happened at the Nangong family's hiding place. After hearing Old Ancestor Shang's voice transmission, they suddenly understood and nodded in agreement without hesitation. Hence, old ancestor Shang, the Qing family's consecrator and the Lu family's great elder simultaneously used their divine power to activate the formation together. Swoosh, swoosh. As the three of them sent out countless divine seals, the originally calm wasteland lit up with dazzling divine light. A multicolored light barrier immediately appeared in the night sky, enveloping an area of 1,000 miles. Immediately after, another dark golden canopy rapidly expanded. During this process, the three monarchs had to be fully focused and give it their all. Only then could they activate the four formations in the shortest time possible. Old ancestor Shang was so focused on casting that he completely ignored the Nangong family's great elder behind him. Two of the formations had been successfully activated and the third formation had just lit up with divine light. At this moment, the back of old ancestor Shang's head was suddenly hit and there was an explosion in his mind. His vision turned black and he couldn't help but open his mouth and spit out a mouthful of blood. An extremely violent divine power fiercely hit his godhead, causing his divine soul to be severely injured and his consciousness to become blurry. His casting was interrupted and old ancestor Shang staggered as he turned around and glared at the Nangong family's great elder. "You bastard! Why did you sneak an attack on me? Do you want to die?" Old ancestor Shang clearly remembered that the Nangong family's great elder was severely injured and had just taken an elixir to heal himself. Why didn't he look like he was severely injured? Although the Shang family and the Nangong family had a grudge, they wouldn't go so far as to kill him. Old ancestor Shang couldn't understand why the Nangong family's great elder would attack him. The Nangong family's great elder remained silent and quickly raised his palms to release a pitch-black soul-extinguishing poison. The surging poisonous gas immediately spread through the cracks in the ground and spread rapidly. Hundreds of elite experts noticed that old ancestor Shang had been sneak attacked and hurriedly charged towards the Nangong family's great elder. However, they only managed to fly a few feet before their godheads were corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison. Their divine souls were severely injured and their vision turned black as their consciousness fell into darkness. Plop, plop. Following a series of muffled sounds, the experts fell into the depths of the cracks like dumplings. Their divine souls were all destroyed and they became walking corpses without any thoughts of their own. Old ancestor Shang's divine soul was already injured and he was corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison. He instantly fell into a coma. Before he fainted, a thought flashed across his mind and he suddenly realized something. "You're Tianxing." Old ancestor Shang finally guessed the truth. However, it was a pity that he no longer had the chance to tell the secret to others. The Nangong family's great elder rushed forward and slapped old ancestor Shang's head, shattering his godhead into pieces. The Shang family's great elder who had lived for 20,000 years died just like that. When the Nangong family's great elder retracted his palm, there were still 9 godhead fragments in his palm. He quickly kept the godhead fragments and used the law of mirror image to transform into old ancestor Shang. As for old ancestor Shang's corpse, he casually shot out a divine flame and burned it into ashes. Old ancestor Shang glanced at the cracks in the ground and only retracted his gaze when he saw that the hundreds of experts were all dead. He quickly passed through the cracks and flew towards the Qing family. Chapter 29:13. The Qing family's great elder and the Lu family's great elder realized that something was amiss. Grand Elder Shang told them that their target had arrived and had attacked Grand Elder Nangong. However, when the three of them were in the process of activating the array, Grand Elder Shang was attacked and stopped casting his spell. The Qing family's great elder and the Lu family's great elder realized that Grand Elder Shang had also been attacked by Tianxing. The two of them released their divine senses to check the crack in the ground where the Shang family members were. Immediately, they saw hundreds of enlightened gods lying motionlessly in the crack with their divine souls shattered. Even old ancestor Shang's corpse was engulfed in golden divine flames and soon turned into ashes. Seeing this, the Qing family's great elder and the Lu family's great elder were shocked. The two of them stopped casting spells and quickly led their subordinates out of the ground and into the night sky. Swoosh. In the blink of an eye, 2 groups of people appeared in the night sky and were on high alert. The area within 1,000 miles was sealed by the 2 arrays. Everyone had their backs against the sealing formation as they vigilantly scanned their surroundings. They believed that their target was somewhere near the array. However, they were not sure if their target was outside the array or trapped inside the array. The most important thing now was to find their target and kill him. At this moment, a divine light shone in the northern night sky. Close to 200 heavenly god experts also quickly spread out and lined up along the ceiling formation. These were the experts from the princess residence. They were all armed with weapons and were on high alert. However, Princess Tianfeng and Huanyu did not appear. The Qing family's great elder's face turned pale. He hesitated for a moment before asking the Lu family's great elder. "Senior Lu, why is Princess Tianfeng not here? The target is hiding in the dark and we can't detect his aura within 1,000 miles. What should we do?" The Lu family's great elder had the same doubts and concerns. He pondered for a moment before replying, "The target is powerful and his methods are strange. We can't guard against him. The only thing we can do now is not to act on our own and not to trust anyone easily. We have to be alert and stay in formation. The target is impatient and will attack us soon." Upon hearing this, the Qing clan's honorary elder felt that Lu Li's words made a lot of sense. He hurriedly replied, "Senior Lu, you're right. We'll do as you say." Even though the 5 aristocratic families competed with each other and had grudges with the princess's manner. However, the Qing clan and the Lu clan had been in an alliance for over 100 years. They had been working together to fight against other forces, so they trusted each other a lot. The two groups of people remained in their original positions ready to attack. Once the target appeared, they would attack with all their might. However, it was a pity that the night sky was completely silent and there was nothing out of the ordinary. 15 minutes had passed, but the target did not appear. Neither did Princess Tianfeng and Huanyu. The grand elder of the Lu family sensed that something was not right. He sent a telepathic message to the Qing family consecrator. "This is not good. Why didn't anyone from the Nangong, Du and Shang family appear? Not only were 300 experts killed but even 3 divine monarchs died." The Qing family's consecrator also realized this problem. His heart tightened as he replied via voice transmission. "It seems that the people from the 3 aristocratic families have already met with misfortune. He was just a young guardian from Qingshan City. Did he really have such terrifying strength and means? Senior Lu, why do I feel that there is something fishy about this?" The grand elder of the Lu family remained silent for a while before replying via voice transmission. "It is indeed fishy. No matter how powerful that kid is, it is impossible for him to kill all the people from the 3 aristocratic families without anyone noticing. Unless this is a plot by Princess Tianfeng. That little bastard Tianxia is actually one of his men. They have joined forces to put on a show to harm the 5 aristocratic families. As long as they get rid of us, Princess Tianfeng will be able to dominate the north and become the real governor. Moreover, he can push the blame to Tianxia. He will be the one who benefits from this and will not have to bear the consequences." One had to admit that the grand elder of the Lu family was very imaginative. The Qing family's consecrator was also shocked by his words. He exclaimed in disbelief, This is impossible. How could Princess Tianfeng be so deranged?" The grand elder of the Lu family said in a low voice, "In this world where the strong prey on the weak, as long as it involves benefits, nothing is impossible. It is always good for us to be cautious." The Qing family's consecrator accepted his words and said in a serious tone, "If that is the case, not only do we have to guard against Tianxing's sneak attack, but we also have to guard against Princess Tianfeng and Huanyu." Just as he finished his sentence, in the darkness a few hundred miles away, there was a faint black shadow that was charging towards them at lightning speed. Swoosh! After 2 breaths of time, the black shadow flew close to the Qing clan and headed straight for them. The Qing family's consecrator's divine sense immediately locked onto the black shadow. He gripped his divine saber tightly and was ready to strike. "Stop right there!" The Qing family's consecrator shouted when he saw that the black shadow looked familiar. The black shadow stopped and stood a few hundred feet away from him, panting heavily. "Little brother, run. This is a plot. We have all been fooled by Earl Qishan." The black shadow's voice was old and hoarse. It was filled with anxiety and anger. The Qing family's consecrator finally saw that the black shadow was a skinny old man with a white beard. It was Patriarch Shang. His chest and face were stained with blood. His hair was disheveled and he was in a sorry state. The Qing family's consecrator was shocked. A thought flashed across his mind. Wasn't Patriarch Shang killed and his body burned to ashes? How could he still be alive? Why did he warn me? At the thought of this, the Qing family's consecrator wanted to expose the other party. However, he was cautious. He sent a telepathic message to the Grand Elder of the Lu family for help. At the same time, he asked Patriarch Xiang, Senior Xiang, why are you so severely injured? Who was it that injured you? Could it be that you were attacked by Tianxing? Patriarch Xiang panted weakly. He waved his hand and said, No. There were two people who attacked me. One was Tianxing and the other was Huan Yu. The Qing family's consecrator's eyes shrunk. He said in shock, How could Huan Yu? I understand now. Do you mean that Tianxing and Infanta Tianfeng are in cahoots? Patriarch Xiang nodded and said, That's right. This is Count Qishan's conspiracy. It's a conspiracy against the 5 aristocratic families. The Qing family's consecrator comforted him. Patriarch Xiang, don't worry. We will protect you. Let's work together to deal with Princess Tianfeng. Following his words, the Grand Elder of the Lu family flew across the night sky and came to his side. Not far away, hundreds of experts from the Lu family rushed over at lightning speed. Patriarch Xiang heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the Qing family and the Lu family had gathered. He quickly flew over. My injuries are too severe. I need to recuperate for a while. Please take care of me. Patriarch Xiang flew to the Qing family's consecrator. He kept a distance of 100 steps and was about to meditate to recuperate. The Qing family's consecrator and the Lu family's grand elder looked at each other and were about to take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. At this moment, 9 black light blades descended from the dark night sky and pierced towards Patriarch Xiang. Another burly figure appeared and slashed out a giant sword that was 100 feet long towards great ancestor Xiang's head. Chapter 29:14. The sudden turn of events shocked the great elder of the Qing family and the great elder of the Lu family. The two of them looked up at the night sky and saw Princess Tianfeng charging toward them with a divine sword in her hand. The other blurry figure was still releasing pitch-black light blades. Needless to say, the blurry figure was Huan Yu. Princess Tianfeng and Huan Yu had finally appeared. The two of them attacked at the same time and their target was Patriarch Xiang. The great elder of the Qing family and the great elder of the Lu family were even more certain that they were right. The person with the problem was Patriarch Xiang. The two of them brandished their swords and sabers without hesitation and used their super skills to attack Patriarch Xiang. Moon falling heavenly rainbow. 9 extremes true emperor / The super skills of the 4 Sir Gods turned into a sky full of divine skill light shadows and engulfed Patriarch Xiang. The night sky within a few hundred miles was illuminated in a dazzling brilliance. The majestic divine power that could suppress heaven and earth and the saber light and sword shadows that could crush everything were about to kill Patriarch Xiang. At this critical moment, Patriarch Xiang, who seemed to be severely injured, had a chilling look in his eyes. The same trick won't work after 3 consecutive times. What a pity. As this thought flashed across his mind, he teleported a few hundred miles away and entered the 2 arrays. The overwhelming divine skill light shadows hit the array light shield and let out a deafening explosion. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the seal array within 1,000 miles shook violently from the bombardment and let out a dazzling light. However, these 2 arrays were of a higher grade and their defensive power was very strong. The 4 Sir Gods' full-force attack only created a few cracks on the array light shield and did not destroy it. Patriarch Xiang, who had escaped into the array light shield, was naturally safe and sound. Everyone was stunned for a moment before they came to their senses. They were pleasantly surprised and pleased. That guy was forced into a corner and fell into the trap himself. The real Patriarch Xiang is dead. That Patriarch Xiang must be an imposter. That guy had been hiding in the dark and thinking of ways to attack us. Now that he has entered the array light shield, he is definitely going to die. It's a pity that only 2 great formations have been activated, so they might not have much destructive power. If all 4 great formations are activated, that guy is dead for sure. The 4 Sir Gods and the many experts were whispering to each other as they discussed. While everyone was pleasantly surprised and excited, they also felt some regret and pity. Currently, the 2 major formations that were activated were the Sealing Formation and the Illusory Formation. Once they entered the formation, they would lose their sense of direction and be sealed within. It would be extremely difficult for them to escape. If the other 2 killing arrays were activated, they would be able to release even more terrifying killing power. At the thought of this, Princess Tianfeng hurriedly ordered, Qing clan's consecrator, Lu clan's Grand Elder, lead your men to control the formation and seal the fake Patriarch Shang. Huan Yu and I will work together to activate the other two formations. The Qing clan's consecrator hesitated for a moment before turning to look at the Lu clan's Grand Elder. Because of what Princess Tianfeng had said, the Qing clan's consecrated elder didn't trust her enough. Under such circumstances he only dared to trust the first elder of the Lu clan. The first elder of the Lu clan gave him a look and cupped his fists at Princess Tianfeng. He said, Princess Tianfeng, if that Patriarch Shang is a fake, it is most likely Tianxing in disguise. This proves that Patriarch Shang has already been killed. Apart from the Shang clan, the Du clan and the Nangong clan have also met with misfortune. This shows that Tianxing's strength and means are far beyond our expectations. Now only the two of us and the princess residents are left. It will be difficult for us to deal with that guy. Of course, Princess Tianfeng understood what the first elder of the Lu clan meant. With a stern look she said, that guy has already entered our trap. What's so difficult about it? I didn't ask you to enter the array light shield to kill him. I only asked you to control the array light shield to suppress him. How could the first elder of the Lu clan agree? With a determined look he said, Princess Tianfeng, I understand what you mean. However, the fact is that the guy has already killed people from the 3 aristocratic families. Not only 300 experts but even 3 Sir Gods have been killed by him. The disciples of the Lu clan and the Qing clan have risked our lives to help you. If we were not careful we would have lost our lives. Princess Tianfeng, shouldn't you be more sympathetic to us? Otherwise, how could we risk our lives to help you? Obviously, this was a last-minute increase in price. Otherwise, they would have quit. Princess Tianfeng had spent so much effort and paid such a high price to get to this point. How could she give up now? Even though she was burning with anger and gritting her teeth, she could only say, Fine, I will sympathize with you. I will double the price that we agreed on earlier. Are you satisfied? The first elder of the Lu clan and the honorary elder of the Qing clan smiled and nodded. Princess Tianfeng is indeed magnanimous. We will do our best to help you. With that, the two of them did not waste any more time. They quickly led their subordinates to control the array light shield. Buzz. As more than 200 people released their divine power and poured it into the divine array, the light shield within a radius of 1,000 miles shone brightly. The power of the array light shield increased by more than 3 times. The invisible suppressive force froze the space within the array light shield. Even Sir Gods could not move. On top of that, the power of the confusion array light shield increased by several times. Even a middle-level Sir God would be lost in the illusory array and would not be able to escape. Although this would not cause much harm to Patriarch Shang, it would still be able to trap him. However, it was able to trap him inside and continuously weaken his strength. Princess Tianfeng and Huan Yu made use of this opportunity to activate the other 2 killing arrays. The process was slow and would take at least 20 breaths of time. Of course, everyone was confident in the other 2 killing arrays. Everyone believed that Tianxing had been suppressed by the Matrix. It was difficult for him to move and he could not escape. In just 20 breaths of time, Princess Tianfeng would be able to activate the last 2 killing arrays. At that time, Tianheng's doomsday would arrive. Time passed quickly. 3 breaths, 5 breaths, 10 breaths. Soon 15 breaths of time passed. Everything was normal. Princess Tianfeng and Huan Yu were not disturbed and were trying their best to activate the killing arrays. However, at the 16th breaths of time something strange happened. An earth-shattering sound suddenly came from the golden light shield within a radius of 1,000 miles. Boom. Crack. A huge crack appeared on the golden light shield and countless shards of divine light flew out. A blurry black shadow shot out from the killing arrays and engulfed the members of the Qing family with a dark green fog. More than 100 elites were immediately engulfed by the dark green fog and screams of agony could be heard. Everyone's flesh and skin started to fester and turn into black blood that flowed on the ground. In the blink of an eye, the elites were corroded and turned into skeletons. They fell to the ground. Even their godheads were corroded by the dark soul-destroying poison and cracks started to appear on their godheads. Their souls were destroyed by the poison. These heavenly deity experts all fainted, no longer breathing. Chapter 29:15. In just 2 seconds, all the elites of the Qing family had been crippled. All of them were reduced to skeletons, their godheads were severely damaged and their divine souls were destroyed. Even the Qing family's official was sent flying by the black shadow. He fell to the ground with blood gushing out of his 7 orifices. When he got up and flew into the sky, he found that his legs had been corroded by the dark green mist. Black blood dripped from them and only his bones were left. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to suck in a breath of cold air. He subconsciously shouted, "Deadly poison. It's poison." There was no doubt that the dark green mist was the blood-dissolving poison. It could corrode the flesh of living beings in a short time. Other than the blood-dissolving poison, there was also the soul-destroying poison. However, the soul-destroying poison was black and not obvious in the night sky. That was why everyone ignored it. As the official of the Qing family screamed, the blood-dissolving poison quickly spread through his body. The soul-destroying poison also entered his body and corroded his godhead. Suddenly he felt a sharp pain in his godhead. His divine soul became blurry and he almost fainted. Puff! The official of the Qing family spat out a mouthful of blood. He was shocked and ran away without looking back. At the same time, the Grand Elder of the Lu family and the Infanta Princess of Tianfeng also saw the black shadow dashing out of the array and releasing the deadly poison. Immediately, the divine senses of the 3 divine lord powerhouses locked onto the black figure. The 300 elites waved their swords and attacked the black shadow. Seeing this, Princess Tianfeng was horrified. She quickly ordered, "Stop. Back off. Don't touch the poison." He had seen hundreds of people of the Qing family being corroded into skeletons with his own eyes. How could he let his men die? Unfortunately, the blood-dissolving poison and the soul-destroying poison spread too quickly. When the 300 elites sensed the danger, it was too late for them to run away. Whoosh! The dark green and black poison spread out like a storm and covered a radius of 200 miles. More than 200 elites were immediately swallowed by the 2 types of poison. In the thick dark green fog, extremely miserable roars and shouts rang out crazily. One by one the divine realm elites were corroded and turned into skeletons. Then their divine souls were also destroyed by the poison. They lost their minds and consciousness and fell to the ground. In less than 3 breaths, the dark green mist became quiet again. More than 260 elites were completely destroyed and turned into skeletons on the ground. The remaining 30 or so people fled as if their lives depended on it. They managed to escape the corrosive effects of the poison. The Grand Elder of the Lu clan, Princess Tianfeng, and Huan Yu also used their mystiques to resist the corrosive effects of the 2 deadly poisons. The 3 of them were on guard and resisted with all their might, so they didn't suffer much damage. But the official of the Qing family. Just as he fled 100 miles away, the black shadow caught up with him. He could only see it clearly when he got closer. In the blurry shadow there was a skinny white-haired old man. It was old Ancestor Shang. Grand Ancestor Shang's left hand shot out a ball of 5-colored lightning that shot towards the Qing family's consecrator like a cannonball. He waved a pitch-black divine sword in his right hand, and a ball of dazzling golden light shot out like a scorching sun. The sinecure of Qing clan was poisoned by the blood-dissolving poison and the soul-destroying poison. Not only was the lower half of his body corroded into white bones, even his soul was severely wounded and his consciousness was blurred. Seeing the 5-colored lightning and the golden sun coming at him, he wanted to teleport away, but it was too late. At the moment of life and death, he could only erupt with his strongest power and condense a law shield to protect himself. 9 types of law powers mixed together to form a 5-colored oval shield. The defensive power of this shield was comparable to a monarch-level middle-grade divine artifact. The Qing family's consecrator prayed that the shield would be able to block the attack. He hoped that the Lu clan's elder, Princess Tianfeng, and Huan Yu would hurry over to kill old Ancestor Shang. Only then could he escape with his life. However, his hopes were shattered on the spot. Boom! The 5-colored lightning struck the law shield, causing an earth-shattering boom to erupt. 5 different types of divine lightning erupted with the most violent and terrifying power, directly shattering the law barrier. Thousands of multicolored shards shot out in all directions, illuminating the night sky for thousands of kilometers. In the next moment, the golden sun struck the Qing family's consecrator. Bam! In the earth-shattering boom, the golden sun exploded, causing a huge mushroom cloud to rise in the night sky. At this moment, the golden light within a 100-mile radius soared into the night sky, as though the real sun had descended. The body of the Qing family's consecrator was blown to smithereens, leaving not even a complete bone behind. Even his godhead had been blasted into 12 pieces and scattered all over the wasteland. Another middle-level Sir God had fallen. Old Ancestor Shang immediately turned around, holding the pitch-black divine sword, and charged toward Princess Tianfeng and the rest. At this time the 30 or so surviving elites had already fled in all directions. Only Princess Tianfeng, the Lu clan's grand elder, and Huan Yu were left near the broken seal. Swoosh! The 3 Sir Gods flew across the night sky and were about to chase after Old Ancestor Shang. Seeing that Old Ancestor Shang had returned, the 3 of them did not chase after him. Instead they spread out and surrounded him. Princess Tianfeng held the dark golden divine sword in her hand as she stared at Old Ancestor Shang with bloodshot eyes. Her body exuded a murderous aura, causing her hair to dance in the wind. Huan Yu was wearing a black robe and a cloak that covered his face. He stood quietly in the night sky as though he had become one with the darkness. The Lu clan's grand elder held a long saber and stared at Old Ancestor Shang with a sharp gaze. The 4 Sir Gods faced each other in the night sky, but none of them made the first move. After a moment of silence, Princess Tianfeng was the first to speak. She shouted angrily, "Tianxing, you despicable vicious bastard. Why don't you show your true form?" Old Ancestor Shang sneered and said with disdain, "Earl Qishan, are you blind? Or are you out of your mind? I am the old ancestor of the Shang family. Can't you tell?" Hearing this, Princess Tianfeng frowned and used her divine sense to observe him. The Lu clan's grand elder and Huan Yu also used their divine sense to check his identity. Unfortunately, the 3 of them could not find any loopholes. The old ancestor of the Shang family in front of them was more real than real. Huan Yu asked coldly, "Old ancestor of the Shang family, you are a person of virtue and prestige. How can you be on the same side as that bastard Tianxing? I don't understand why the Shang family is going against the princess residence." Old Ancestor Shang stroked his white beard and sneered. "You are a useless princess. Be it in terms of strength, scheming, or tactics, you are all suppressed by Mr. Tianxing. If the Shang family succumbs to you, not only will they not gain any benefits, they will also be restrained. However, if I work with Mr. Tianxing, we can kill all of you. By then, the Shang family will be the strongest in Tianfeng City and will definitely become the new princess.